Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third Energy Security Conference from the Caspian Policy Center. I've got a few very short housekeeping things to read for you. Welcome to Arundel House, and much thanks to IISS for hosting us again. They're very keen to give you any assistance you need while you're there. Fire safety. If the fire alarm is activated, you'll hear a loud, continuous, and very annoying siren that will sound. Should there be a real emergency, you'll be asked to follow the fire exit signs along here and take the stairs to exit the building, which is right, the stairs are right there. Don't use the lifts. You'll be asked to congregate in the gardens on Temple Place, opposite the main entrance. Please don't re-enter the building until told to do so. Smoking's not permitted anywhere in the building, and they have basic first aid equipment, alongside with defibrillators. So if you or anyone else like me feel unwell or require medical attention, please speak to one of the staff. So that's the housekeeping. I want now to introduce the president of Caspian Policy Center, Efgan Nifti, to open with the substance. And after that, we'll be looking at a video that Bob Blackman, the chair of the Azerbaijan all-party parliamentary group, has kindly done for us. He couldn't be here, but you'll be seeing him shortly.
Good morning, London. Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here once again. I want to thank IISS for hosting us second time this year. And it's good to continue this tradition of having conversation on the Trans-Caspian region. We're just coming from Berlin, where we had discussions on U.S. transatlantic relations. I know a lot of pieces are moving, but it's important to keep focus on our region, and I'm glad that we have an excellent audience here, an excellent lineup of speakers. I have a lot of long speech here. I'm going to try to not to bore you too much. Your Excellencies, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Caspian Policy Center is proud to host the third annual CPC London Energy Security Conference to bring together expert opinions from the Caspian region, the United Kingdom, and the United States to discuss energy security, connectivity, and the energy transition in the Caspian region, as well as the UK and Europe's involvement and opportunities in these areas. As a think tank based in the United States, we are excited to host second event here in London this year. We hope that this will become an ongoing platform for debate and discussion regarding the region, as we are proud to provide this to the policy and business community. We had very interesting developments this year. Especially, I want to highlight the C5+1 summit in Washington, where President Trump hosted presidents of the Central Asian countries. And I want to also highlight the joining of Azerbaijan to the C5 community, making it C6. And we are looking forward to expansion of integration in this region and further development of the prosperity. The developments witnessed in the Caspian region over the past year have been significant. To start with, the agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, with support from the United States, represents not only a breakthrough for political stability, but also a new era for connectivity. With the launch of the Trump International Route for Peace and Prosperity, TRIP, the South Caucasus will be more integrated than ever before. This agreement has the potential to reshape the South Caucasus into a hub of trade and cooperation at the very moment the world is seeking secure and diversified supply chains. At the same time, Caspian region has grown in importance and once again becoming a true crossroads between Europe and Asia, serving as a critical transit hub for energy, trade, and transportation networks. The Caspian provides access to important markets and serves as a gateway for the world to the Caucasus, Central Asia, and beyond. Regional connection and cooperation within the Caspian region are also increasing. At the Tashkent summit in November, we saw the Central Asian states take the historic decision to add Azerbaijan to the C5 format and create the C6. This move is a huge step forward in building a strong bridge between Central Asia and the South Caucasus, enhancing connectivity across the Caspian. In the energy sector, the Caspian region has gained unprecedented relevance in global markets. With its vast oil and gas reserves and immense renewable energy potential, the region has become strategically important for Europe's energy security. The disruption of traditional supply routes between Russia and Europe due to the war in Ukraine has intensified the role of Caspian states in diversifying hydrocarbon exports and helping Europe meet its energy needs. The Trans-Caspian transport route has already proven vital in bringing Caspian energy resources to European markets. In February, Turkey and Turkmenistan signed a historic agreement on the transportation of natural gas from Turkmenistan to Turkey. Even though the scale of the deal is relatively small, it sets a strategic precedent, potentially reshaping energy flows from Central Asia to Europe in the future. In June, Azerbaijan's agreement with Germany to supply natural gas for the next 10 years, starting 2025. The annual quantity will be gradually approximately 1.5 billion cubic meters a year. This long-term commitment strengthens European energy diversification and elevates Southern Gas Corridor's importance at a time of global volatility. BP has been among the leading British companies closely engaged in the region through extraction of hydrocarbon resources as well as exploring its vast renewable energy potential. Over the summer, a BP-led group approved a $2.9 billion investment for a new offshore compressor platform at the Shah Deniz gas field, designed to extract additional 50 billion cubic meters of gas over the project's lifetime. As for the renewable energy sources, the Caspian region also possesses great potential. In June, we saw the establishment of the Green Energy Corridor, a joint venture between Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan to explore renewable electricity across the Caspian and onward to Europe. For the first time, Central Asian wind and solar power are being positioned not just for domestic use, but also as future clean energy supply for European markets. In October, the EU and financial partners announced a new support for hydropower development in Central Asia, centered on the Kambarata 1 hydropower plant in Kyrgyzstan. The cooperation unveiled at the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels aims to expand renewable electricity generation, improve regional energy cooperation, and strengthen water security across Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. With further optimization of the Trans-Caspian corridor, both Europe and the Caspian states can advance their shared goal of diversification, resilience in energy supply chains. The challenge of energy security is one of the issues that require common action. The Caspian region continues to play an important role in providing traditional energy resources, and looking into the future, it's poised to contribute to global energy security with sustainable, secure, and affordable energy. Outside governments and companies should be looking beyond immediate needs and act on the region's potential to meet the future global energy demands. In light of our conference in London, I want to express our gratitude to the honored guests and excellencies and our ambassadors for being here, joining here with us today. I look forward to listening to our distinguished guests. Thank you for your enthusiasm and ability to participate in today's discussions. Thank you so much and welcome again.
There it is.
Thanks, Bob Blackman, Chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Azerbaijan UK Relations. I'm sorry I can't be with you at the conference, but I'm engaged in other parliamentary activities. So it's important that we actually understand about energy security and how we bring that not only to the UK and to Azerbaijan, but across the world. At the moment, obviously, the demand for energy is increasing all the time, not only in the renewables, be it solar, be it wind power, or other forms of hydroelectric power, but also in oil and gas as well. What we also know is that the world temperature is increasing literally as we speak. And indeed, by over the next few years, unless action is taken, then temperatures will reach an unsustainable level, and indeed the sea level will start to rise, and countries that we know about and islands that we know about will become flooded. So obviously this conference today is about how we transform the position in terms of energy to make sure there is energy security across various different countries, because the risk is that there will be a position of wars being fought over energy. How we transform the Caspian Sea opportunity, not just from oil and gas, but also to the use of wind power. And we know, of course, there are pretty fierce winds in the Caspian Sea that can be harnessed for that power to be utilised across Asia and into Europe. So I trust that you're going to have a good conference today that will build up to a meaningful suggestion as to how things can move forward. And I look forward to hearing the results of the conference and indeed working with you to achieve the aim that we all have, which is energy security for the world.
So ambassadors are welcome to come up here if you wish, or make your speech from there, but please press the red button at the beginning. And yes, that's right. I've just done it. So we'll do it in the order, running down the table as far as you can away from me. So that will mean that His Excellency the Ambassador from Turkey has the floor.
Thank you so much, David. It's always a great pleasure to join discussions organized by Caspian Policy Center. So I should thank Efgan Bey and Ambassador Moran for their hard work and efforts in bringing us together. Actually, we have been debating energy security for decades. So this has always been a relevant topic for our countries and societies. What is different today is the extreme sensitivity of our societies to energy disruptions. In a hyper-connected world, even a few hours without electricity or internet can cause serious social and economic disturbances. The rise of AI and increasing number of data centers has led to an exponential increase in global energy demand, yet we do not have the technological breakthroughs needed to meet this demand in a clean and sustainable way. This is why the world is witnessing renewed interest in nuclear. Energy security must now be understood in a broader and more integrated sense as we see it. It's no longer only about ensuring physical supply. It is about building resilient infrastructure, strengthening market flexibility, developing alternative routes and sources, and navigating an increasingly complex international and regional geopolitical climate. Indeed, energy is not just an economic commodity now. It shapes geopolitics, national resilience, and strategic decision-making. Attacks on critical infrastructure, sanctions, tariffs, and export controls on critical materials are shared challenges. And energy has already become a geopolitical tool. It's not a new phenomenon. In the past, this meant gas and pipelines, maybe. And today, it also includes rare earth elements and critical minerals. My country, which is a net importer of hydrocarbons, has long prioritized energy security as a pillar of national welfare and economic growth. We have taken some tangible steps, and we have been focusing on them today. We made major investments in green transformation. We focused on new technologies. We expanded our storage capacity. We diversified our energy sources, and we continue to diversify our energy sources. And we continue to invest in domestic onshore and offshore resources, including in the Black Sea. We have already been a reliable energy partner in our larger region, meaning the Caspian Basin, Middle East, and Europe, with major projects such as Bakü-Tiflis-Ceyhan pipeline, TANAP, the Southern Gas Corridor. We have also built a robust energy infrastructure in our country, including 5 LNG terminals and extensive external gas networks. These investments have allowed us to withstand recent energy crisis and support some of our European partners' energy security, including Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary. And these relationships are not one-off arrangements, but part of a strategic realignment of energy corridors. As Efgan Bey underlined, our recent MOU with Turkmenistan is critical. We have been talking about this for decades now, but hopefully now it's time to seize this unique window of opportunity for Europe and for the region to utilize Turkmen gas towards Europe. On the energy transition and energy independence, just to give you a couple of figures about what we have been doing on our end. Currently, about 61% of our installed capacity is renewable based. This makes us 5th in Europe and 11th in the world in renewable energy. We have reached 38 giga in solar and wind, and our goal is 120 giga by 2035, which requires and taps about $80 billion of additional investment, which literally requires about 8 to 9 giga every year. We are in talks with World Bank and international institutions about a large grid investment package as well. We continue to invest to untap onshore and offshore hydrocarbon reserves. We are also focusing seriously on nuclear. We target 20 gigawatts by 2050. As you know, we already started building one major nuclear power plant. We plan to build 2 more, and we plan to invest in SMR technology as well. And we are in talks with different companies and partners, including in the UK. We are also investing in hydrogen, including by using hydrogen trains, battery storage, carbon capture, and critical minerals and rare earths as well. A good news for us is that next year we'll host COP31. We have been advocating to be a host country for the last 4 or 5 years. And finally, we reached an agreement with Australia, which was also another candidate for next year's COP. It will be hosted in our beautiful city of Antalya, which is well known to some of you probably. And Antalya previously hosted G20, so it has a strong infrastructure, and probably it will be a lower carbon footprint in terms of gathering all these people at the center of the world. And unlike previous 4 hosts, for the first time, Turkey will not be a hydrocarbon exporting nation, so this is important. And given our unique position between East and West, we will act as a bridge between the global North and South, ensuring that no one is left behind. In Belém, in Brazil, we have updated our nationally determined contribution, and we are committed to driving the global climate agenda forward. We have some ambitious plans. We have important projects, including Zero Waste Initiative, for example, which is championed by the First Lady of Turkey. Currently, for example, the recycling ratio rate in my country is about 36%, and our objective is to increase it to 60% in 10 years. Altogether, we believe that energy security and green transformation are not competing goals. We must deliver both. This is the major challenge that our countries and societies face. As we prepare to lead COP31 next year, and as a regional energy partner, we will continue to work together with our brotherly countries in Central Asia and also in the Caucasus, and we will continue to untap additional resources, if possible, in the Middle East, all the way from the Gulf and obviously from Iraq, and given the recent positive developments in Syria as well, to continue to play an important role in the energy security of not only my country, but also our European partners. And we look forward to working all these countries to chart a path towards a more secure, sustainable, and cooperative energy future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Congratulations on hosting the next COP. That will be a very important one, and I'm glad it will be in your hands. Now I want to pass the floor to Ambassador of Uzbekistan to the UK. Ambassador.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, David. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, distinguished guests, it's my great pleasure to join you today to discuss one of the most pressing issues on the global agenda, which is energy security. I would like to sincerely thank the Caspian Policy Center for bringing us together and for creating this platform to exchange our country's perspectives and our views. Uzbekistan assigns the highest priority to ensure energy security. As our economy expands and our population grows, so too does the demand for reliable, safe, and sustainable energy. To meet those rising needs, we are accelerating the development of our national energy capacities. First and foremost, Uzbekistan has taken major steps to increase the share of renewable energy in our energy generation. Over the past 5 years, nearly $20 billion of foreign investments have been attracted into the energy sector. We commissioned 9.6 gigawatts of new modern generating capacity, including 14 solar and wind power plants with a combined capacity of 3.5 gigawatts. As a result, renewables now account for 30% of Uzbekistan's total generation. Today, more than 50 large-scale energy projects are being implemented jointly with international partners. By 2030, we expect to attract an additional $35 billion of FDI, raising the share of renewable energy to 54%. These measures will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions by almost 16 million tons annually. Alongside our national efforts, we place great importance on international energy cooperation. Uzbekistan has established mutually beneficial partnerships with the countries of Central Asia, with a shared vision of transforming our region into the hub for green economy growth and clean energy. We see enormous potential for joint development of solar, wind, hydropower, and green hydrogen. One example is our cooperation with Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan on the Kambarada hydropower plant, a project worth $4.2 billion. Leading financial institutions such as EBRD, European Investment Bank, OPEC Fund, the Asian Development Bank, and others have expressed strong interest in supporting this project. Not long ago, such initiatives were difficult even to discuss. Today, we are viewed by major financial institutions as a symbol of growing regional cooperation and confidence in our region's long-term potential. This is very important for us. Kambarata 1 is not only an economic undertaking, it is a green energy project that will expand renewable capacity and enable them to manage water resources more efficiently in our region. Our cooperation with Azerbaijan is also advancing. Uzbekistan and SOCAR have agreed to jointly explore and develop oil resources in the Ustyurt Plateau in Uzbekistan, marking a new stage in our energy partnership. I would like to highlight one important point, what Efgan was highlighting as well in his speech. At the recent Tashkent summit of Central Asian leaders, Azerbaijan became the full-fledged member of our regional community. And now we expect our collaboration to deep across all spheres, and of course, with the energy remaining at the foremost of our joint efforts. Uzbekistan's partnerships expand far beyond the region. We are implementing large energy projects with partners from United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and China. Major global companies such as Aqua Power, Masdar, Linde, Shanghai Environment, and Total Energies have already invested over $8 billion, significantly contributing to the growth of our country's green energy sector. We value our productive collaboration with European partners as well, particularly in expanding clean and renewable energy technologies. Uzbekistan has supported the international initiative to transport electricity from Central Asia towards Europe. Last year, during COP29, the presidents of Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan signed an agreement to advance this project. In essence, the project represents a new green energy corridor, opening fresh opportunity for cooperation between Central Asia and the Caucasus. Today, we can say with confidence that these regions are moving in a synchronized and mutually reinforcing direction across energy, trade, and transportation. Dear participants, let me conclude by emphasizing that my country possesses immense energy potential, such as 500 gigawatts in solar, 100 gigawatts in wind, and 10 gigawatts in hydropower. Unlocking even a portion of this capacity will not only transform the region and Uzbekistan energy landscape, but will contribute meaningfully to the stability of the region, global decarbonization, and long-term energy security. In this critical decade for climate and energy, Uzbekistan stands ready to work hand in hand with our partners in Central Asia, Caucasus, Europe, UK, and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. It was a very full year for Uzbekistan, including the Samarkand Central Asia EU summit, which was also breaking barriers in terms of combining it with a climate summit, which meant that the leadership of the EU and the region were able to exchange positions and make decisions. Thank you. I'm now going to pass the microphone, if I can, to Ambassador of Armenia to the UK. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moran. Good morning, everyone. First of all, to thank Caspian Policy Center, Mr. Efgan Nifti, for inviting and for putting together this series of interesting discussions, this one on energy security, and to thank for IISS for hosting us here this morning today, and our friend David Moran for always coordinating in an excellent manner these discussions and moderating them. Over the past several years, the world has learned with some discomfort that energy security can no longer be taken for granted. Major economies, once thought resilient, have found themselves exposed to supply shocks, spiraling prices, and sudden shifts in global markets. Conflicts and hybrid disruptions have only deepened these vulnerabilities, reminding us that stability in energy is inseparable from stability in everything else. For the South Caucasus, these global disruptions are felt especially quickly. Our region sits at the meeting point of East and West, Europe and Asia, and as can be said, when the world sneezes, the South Caucasus is often the first to catch a cold. Energy security is an area where that is felt. It is for this reason that Armenia treats energy security as a fundamental component of national security. And we are acting accordingly. Armenia has established a stable, long-term framework for our transition, one that aligns with our international commitments and our responsibility to future generations. Our electricity system is deliberately diverse. It is a combination of nuclear, hydro, solar, and steadily expanding portfolio of renewables. Solar already accounts for more than 5% of total electricity production, and we are on a track to raise that to by 15% by 2030. Looking further ahead, Armenia will develop an additional 1,000 megawatts in solar and wind capacity by 2030 and at least 2,000 megawatts by 2040. On August 8, alongside the historic meeting of the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, hosted by President Trump in Washington, D.C., which resulted in a long-awaited peace being established between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and the reaffirmation of our commitment to unblocking regional communications. On the same day, Armenia and the United States signed a memorandum of understanding on an energy security partnership, expanding cooperation on civil nuclear energy, including small modular reactor technologies. This is a milestone for our long-term security and for creating a resilient, low-carbon future in our region. It also signals something equally important, that peace and stability create a space for real investment and technological progress. Indeed, the spirit of partnership has already produced tangible results. The US government recently approved the deployment of advanced NVIDIA chips for $500 million data center in Armenia, $500 million worth of data center in Armenia, operated by the Armenian-American company Firebird AI. This facility will be powered entirely by clean energy, another demonstration of how innovation, security, and sustainability reinforce one another. Armenia views connectivity through trade, transport, digital networks, and energy as essential to building resilience and safeguarding our future. In this context, I wish to again highlight the significance of the recent Armenia-Azerbaijan-United States high-level agreements. The agreements that all regional routes must operate on the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and jurisdiction mirrors the vision of the Crossroads of Peace initiative of Armenia. These principles are at the very foundations on which regional stability must be built. Another key outcome of August 8 trilateral meeting is the Trump route, or Trump route for international peace and prosperity, which will not only reconnect Armenia and Azerbaijan, but it will also create economic opportunity, support energy cooperation, and deliver peace dividends across the South Caucasus and Central Asia. Peace in this case is not a slogan, it is a practical infrastructure. The route will also allow for energy systems to function more reliably across the borders. Stable routes enable the movement of equipment for renewable projects, support the modernization of grids and expansion of pipelines, and make it possible to transit energy where it's needed. In this way, the Trump route becomes a strategic enabler of diversified energy supply, regional market integration, and ultimately a more peaceful and resilient energy landscape. I also wanted to inform that Armenia will be delighted at the end of the next year to host COP17, which is, although it is on biodiversity, but it's also yet another major global gathering on climate change, on overall cooperation on all of those areas. We'll be delighted to host the representatives of all your countries at our COP17 in Armenia next October. Ladies and gentlemen, the global energy landscape will continue to face volatility, shocks, and uncertainty. For Armenia, energy security is a matter of stability, resilience, and peace. By diversifying our energy mix, modernizing infrastructure, expanding cross-border connectivity, and pursuing strategic partnerships like the August 8 agreement and Trump route for international peace and prosperity, we strengthen our ability to withstand disruptions and ensure reliable, affordable supply for our people. Armenia stands ready to work with all stakeholders to ensure that energy security, connectivity, and cooperation remain pillars of stability in our region today and for the generations to come. And with this, I thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and congratulations on your COP, which is, even though it's lesser known, it's just as important since biodiversity is crucially and linked to everything else that we're discussing, and looking forward to that COP and to coming to Yerevan.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. I'm now going to give the floor to the Charge d'Affaires of Kazakhstan to the UK. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, dear friends. First of all, allow me to echo my colleagues, ambassadors, and thank Caspian Policy Center, the David Moran and Efgan Nifti and ISS for hosting us today and for opportunity to be part of this discussion on energy security and its crucial role in global economic, environmental, and social stability. The theme of today's event resonates strongly with Kazakhstan's approach to energy, which strives to ensure reliability, affordability, while adapting to the global energy transition. Kazakhstan is blessed with vast energy resources, which form the backbone of our economy and appeal to global partners. We're among the world's top producers of oil, gas, coal, and uranium. Additionally, Kazakhstan enjoys abundant solar and wind energy potential. As a responsible nation, we are committed to achieving net zero emissions. Renewables currently account for over 6% of Kazakhstan electricity generation, surpassing our 2025 target ahead of schedule. By 2030, we aim for 15% and by 2050 for 50%. However, while renewables shape the future, oil remains essential today as the world's primary energy source. Kazakhstan holds around 30 billion barrels of oil reserves, ranking us among the top 15 oil-rich countries. Our oil exports are an integral part of the global energy security mix, and in 2024 we became the third largest oil supplier to the European Union, providing 11.5% of its oil imports. We're also focusing on transitional energy sources, cleaner than coal and oil, yet more accessible and reliable than wind and solar alone. In particular, we are investing in natural gas and nuclear energy. Kazakhstan is the world's largest producer of uranium, supplying about 42% of global demand. This means that nearly half of the world's nuclear plants rely on Kazakh uranium. In the coming years, we plan to build our first nuclear power plant and lay the foundation for more. Kazakhstan is also developing new infrastructure and energy routes to further enhance energy security. We're expanding the Trans-Caspian corridor as an alternative route for energy delivery to Europe. Last year, we began shipping oil from the port of Aktau to Azerbaijan, connecting to the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. In 2024, also, we increased volumes to 1.42 million tons and plan to expand this to over 2 million tons, potentially creating a new Trans-Caspian pipeline project with European partners. For investors, these steps demonstrate that Kazakhstan is strengthening energy supply chains and minimizing dependency on single routes. We are building a robust bridge connecting Central Asia's energy resources with Europe and beyond. Besides our natural resources, Kazakhstan offers a favorable business environment and a skilled workforce. We are investing heavily in human capital, particularly in the energy sector. We've welcomed world-class universities such as Heriot-Watt and Coventry, which have opened their branches in Kazakhstan. These institutions provide degrees in oil, gas, and electric power engineering, ensuring that our workforce is globally competitive. In conclusion, Kazakhstan is determined to play a central role in global energy security as the world undergoes this crucial transition. We're committed to being a stable and predictable energy partner with a focus on sustainability, innovation, and diversification of our resources, infrastructure, and investment in human capital position us to navigate the complexities of the energy transition while ensuring reliable energy supplies for the world. We look forward to working closely with the Caspian region, with the European Union, United Kingdom to adapt to these realities and together ensure a secure, sustainable and prosperous energy future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I also noticed that next year, Astana has a major conference about at head of state as well.
Yes, that would be the global climate conference summit. Yes.
So another thing to look forward to.
And everybody's invited, yes. Thank you.
Lovely. I'm now going to give the floor to the Chargé d'Affaires of Georgia, to the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, dear colleagues, it's a privilege to address you today as we reflect on energy security, navigating new realities. I extend my sincere gratitude to the organizers for conveying this important gathering. We meet at a moment of profound transformation in the global energy landscape. As our region, situated between the Caspian Basin and Europe, continues to play the vital role in Europe's diversification and long-term stability. Georgia, positioned at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, is rapidly developing into a multidimensional regional hub. Over the past years, we have invested significantly in modernizing our core infrastructure, strengthening connectivity, and enabling efficient east-west trade routes. The Middle Corridor crossing Georgia is emerging as one of the most reliable and secure alternatives to traditional routes, offering the shortest connection between Europe and Asia. With the upcoming Anaklia deep-sea ports, Georgia's logistic capacities will expand even further. Our role as predictable and secure transit partners is directly linked to Europe's energy security. For decades, Georgia has been key link in major regional energy corridors, including the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline, Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum gas pipeline, and the Southern Gas Corridor, which has been supplying the gas to Europe since 2020. This partnership underscores Georgia's strategic importance in ensuring uninterrupted energy flows from Caspian Basin to Europe. In addition to pipelines, Georgia plays a critical role in regional rail connectivity. The Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railway provides a fast, reliable link between the Caspian region and Turkey, further connecting Europe and Asia. It complements the Middle Corridor by facilitating the efficient movement of goods, energy equipment, and essential supplies, reinforcing Georgia's roles as a strategic transit hub. The new energy security challenges in Europe caused by Russian invasion in Ukraine prompted its member states to seek new or additional secure hydrocarbon sources. Providing increased volumes of Caspian hydrocarbons to Europe through a Southern Gas Corridor via Georgia is among the most effective and immediate to reduce Europe's dependence on Russia's energy resources. The Central Asian countries are eager to supply their oil and gas resources via our corridor, but enhanced political focus and support, as well as additional capital investments, are needed to fully harness the energy and connectivity potential of our region. Georgia reaffirms its willingness to cooperate on developing other important energy transit projects, including Trans-Caspian pipeline and LNG-related projects. Yet our vision extends well beyond the hydrocarbons. We are also keen to support the expansion of green electricity supply chains to European market. In this regard, laying a Black Sea submarine cable is an initiative of strategic importance. This project lays a foundation for new green energy corridors, strengthening Georgia's role as electricity transit hub. The 2022 Bucharest Agreement between Georgia, Azerbaijan, Hungary, and Romania provides a solid political basis for this partnership. The European Commission recently, European Commission's decisions to grant status of project of mutual interest to the cable further underscores the strategic value of this link. Georgia is also advancing its role as a regional digital hub. The planned Black Sea underwater fiber optic cable will create a digital corridor linking Europe and Asia, supporting data infrastructure and enhancing the region's technological resilience. These initiatives, renewable energy trade, digital connectivity, expanded ferry link with European ports, and modernized transport infrastructure are transforming Georgia's place in the regional and global economy. Our strategic location, supported by reliable institutions and open economic policies, allows Georgia to serve as credible and efficient transit partner for both energy and goods. Among our key priorities are further development of Middle Corridor and Trans-Caspian Road, enhancing Caspian Black Sea connectivity, launching Anakli Deep Sea Port, expanding Southern Gas Corridor, constructing Black Sea electricity and fiber optic cable, integrating Georgia more deeply with the EU energy grid, and advancing offshore wind and solar projects along the Black Sea coast. Georgia stands ready to do its part, supporting secure transit, enabling new energy corridors, and contributing to a more resilient, diversified, and sustainable future across the Caspian, the Black Sea, and the wider Euro-Atlantic region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we go to Azerbaijan. The councillor from the embassy to the UK. You have the floor and the last word. Well, actually, I have the last word, but before you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador David Moran and Mr. Efgan Nifti to Caspian Policy Center for this opportunity for bringing us together. It's an honor for me to speak in front of such a distinguished audience and with such distinguished colleagues and ambassadors. Azerbaijan has always played a major role in energy security, European energy security. As you know, Azerbaijan is currently exporting natural gas to 12 European countries, 8 of them being the member of European Union. Diversification is very important for energy independence, and in that sense, Azerbaijani gas as a transitional fuel and southern gas corridor is very important. Speaking of energy security, we also need to speak about the renewables, because there is always a dichotomy between climate action and energy security. This always come hand in hand, and Azerbaijan acknowledges that. President Aliyev announced 6 gigawatt of target of renewables from solar, wind, and hydrocarbon in Azerbaijan, which will make over 35% of Azerbaijan's total energy grid by 2030. Also, I would like to speak about how Azerbaijan is envisioning to take this green energy from Central Asia and Caspian to the European region. We are having 4 interconnector projects. They are very exciting, and I will name all of them as Caspian Black Sea Europe route, Central Asia Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan Turkey, Azerbaijan Turkey, Georgia, Bulgaria. They are already under feasibility studies, and I am very excited to let you know that Caspian Black Sea Europe route has been included in 10 years development project of European network system operators very recently. Speaking of energy security and again climate awareness, Azerbaijan hosted last year COP29. I would like to congratulate our Turkish friends for taking up COP presidency next year, and also Armenian friends for hosting next year COP17 on biodiversity. For Azerbaijan, it has been a real success because we have been addressing one of the thorniest issues of global climate agenda. We have agreed global climate finance. We have made loss and damage fund up and running, and also we have agreed Article 6 on carbon markets, which has been was negotiated for the last decade. Speaking of connectivity, I also would like to let you know that Azerbaijan is aiming to be a regional hub for digital Silkway. And we think our cheap electricity, comparatively cheap electricity, and also suitable climatic conditions in the northern regions of Azerbaijan gives us all the merit to be ambitious in that regard. So very exciting things are happening in our region very recently. Some of my colleagues already touched upon some of them. So I would like to start with UK-Azerbaijan strategic partnership, which we announced during Minister Doti's recent visit to Azerbaijan in August. And of course, energy security and energy transition will be one of the pillars of this strategic partnership. We are very excited for that. Another very exciting development in our region is, of course, 8th of August Washington meeting between the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan with participation of US President Donald Trump. We have initialed the text of the peace agreement. We are very hopeful that this will transform our region into a very peaceful region. And the meeting also set the stage for TRIP project, Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity. TRIP as a wider project in the Middle Corridor has a very, very transformative role for our region, and we are very, very excited to see the very good results of this TRIP and, as I said, wider Middle Corridor projects. Also, I would like to let you know that very recently our European Union friends, the Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, announced that EU is considering to be part of these connectivity projects in our region. We are very thankful because we are working very hard to sustain peace in our region, and the support from our partners like UK and Europe is very important in that. So Azerbaijan has finished its part of Middle Corridor and is finishing it in 2026. Armenia is working its part with the US, and we are also aiming to invest in our railroads in Nakhchivan. In that sense, we are expecting the support from our UK and EU partners. And also we are very grateful to the UK side for being involved in the connectivity projects, especially in terms of bringing private sectors and international financial institutions to that. The last but not the least, I would like to mention, as our Uzbek ambassador mentioned, Azerbaijan has recently been the member of C6 platform. We are very happy to be finalizing this logical continuation of our historic geopolitical and geoeconomic ties. And this development will give a further impetus to as a political umbrella for the Middle Corridor. And so I think I'll stop here, and I'm very thankful again for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Azerbaijan has had the pleasure, well, I'll say it this way, of a presidency a year, and you, like Britain in COP26, know that for a whole year after the COP, that when it's over, the hard work is equally tough because of the need to have influence at the moment when the influence is waning and they're already looking at the next COP. So thank you for that work. It's thankless in many things, but Azerbaijan was active and influential. So thank you. And you mentioned connectivity. I just take this opportunity to say that the summer conference, as usual, will be on connectivity, and just like this summer, looking at all aspects of it and how it melds together. So my last word is just to invite you to give another round of applause for all of the ambassadors and colleagues who've given us a great insight to their collaboration, which is complementary, and it's very inspiring. Thank you very much. We'll now change nameplates and indeed people. So there'll be a short break.
All right, good, excellent. The noise level has gone down. Excellent, thank you. All right, welcome to, well, first of all, thank you very much to the previous panel, all the ambassadors and chargés and what have you. Very interesting to hear the perspectives from the region. And I think it also brought home, to me at least, the energy security navigating new realities. In that, you've got kind of two main concepts. One, what does energy security mean, and what are the new realities? And we heard a bit about both of those. Clearly, energy security means different things to different countries and different people. For the UK government, energy security is really defined as being dashed for renewables, so we don't have to import from overseas. The European Union very much focused on the Green Deal plus other measures. So again, for both of those, one of the main goals is not just energy security, but also tackling climate change. But for some EU countries, of course, the energy security means how to replace Russian oil and gas, given what's been happening in Ukraine over the last couple of years. Whereas for consumers and business, really what they're looking for is reliable energy supplies that are affordable, of course. And we are seeing some of the tensions in all of that in recent years in UK and EU with the closure of some petrochemical plants and refineries, given the high energy costs that some are facing. And we're also seeing some consumer backlash to the green transition as well, again, partly due to what appear to be higher costs. Whereas for Caspian oil and gas producers, of course, energy security means something rather different, which is ensuring that they still have markets. And I think we heard a bit about that earlier, but they have markets and they can reach those markets, of course. And we heard about from the transit countries there. And the whole question of physical security, which I think one of our speakers will address in the next session. In terms of new realities, of course, everyone knows about the new reality of Russia, Ukraine, and trying to sort of get rid of or stop using Russian oil and gas. Also, the IEA forecast now saying that oil and gas consumption will increase up until 2050, which is sort of very different to what people were hoping. And in the meantime, lots of LNG supplies due to come on stream in the next few years. And we've also heard again today about the question of critical minerals and the need for rare earth materials to support the green transition and the difficulties in actually getting hold of them. And of course, COP30 outcomes and what that means for the world. So the speakers today, I hope, in session one, will address a lot of these issues, both what energy security is and in the context of those new realities, from both, and address that hopefully both from the European and from the Caspian perspective. I'm first going to go all the way to the end of the table to John Roberts, who will kick us off, please.
James, thank you very much indeed, and thanks to Efgan Nifti and to CPC and everyone for organising the conference. am going to focus on electricity rather than gas, essentially because I think that is the most immediate issue. But if Gulmira, for some reason, cannot come, I'm happy to address the gas issue as well. But the bottom line is there is a need for increased energy from or via or through the Caucasus and the Caspian. Why? Because the Black Sea itself as a region has never been more vulnerable than it is today. We have the attacks on the Shadow Fleet of Russian tankers. We have Ukrainian assaults on Novorossiysk, prompting the Kazakhs temporarily to suspend oil deliveries from there. We have a sustained long-range Ukrainian assault on Russian energy installations and exports, coupled with a major Russian campaign to disrupt energy production and distribution within Ukraine. We have to face two possible issues. Possible. One, what happens if Ukraine itself undergoes a near total collapse of its energy distribution system this winter, so that you don't just get the 24-hour or 16-hour or 8-hour blackouts, but you get near permanent blackouts? What does Europe do to provide energy to Ukraine? One ought to add in this context that, curiously enough, Ukraine is also an energy exporter in electricity, as well as an importer. Then alternatively, if the Ukrainian attacks are successful, already we have seen an end to Russian diesel and gasoline exports to the south and west. What happens if there is an end to Russian oil exports by conventional methods to the west? So the situation has never been more critical, which means whatever alternative resources can come into play become ever more crucial. Now, the big long-term hope for Europe is clearly the developments of the Neptune Deep gas field off Romania and the prospect for Bulgaria developing the Han Asparuh, coupled with, of course, the oncoming on stream of Turkey's Sakarya gas field. But I think that Romania and Bulgaria are going to need an increase in physical and diplomatic protection. Why do I say that? Because offshore platforms are vulnerable, how do we put this, to the kind of accident that occurs in a war that is not necessarily acknowledged to be an act of aggression. So that's one point. So what can Central Asia and the Caucasus do? Well, the big prospect that we have had talked about for some time has been an increase in gas, and that's why I'm going to leave it to Gulmira if she turns up. But there's also the fact that Azerbaijan is pursuing a genuine twin-track policy. That twin track is to double its deliveries to mainstream Europe through the Southern Gas Corridor, and also to start very serious electricity exports based on renewable energy production within. And it's that I'm going to focus on, because traditionally, the assumption has been that this would be by way of a Black Sea cable. Now, there are actually two Black Sea cable projects. One is the Georgian 1 gigawatt project. The other is the Azerbaijani 3.9 gigawatt project. It is quite possible that were they to come about, the two would actually be developed in coordination or effectively become one project. But at the moment, they're technically separate. And while there is a feasibility study for the Georgian one that says under certain circumstances it may be commercially viable, the feasibility study for the Azerbaijani project that was expected to be announced at COP last December was never announced. We simply got a reference from the people who carried it out, CESI, that they were continuing their studies. But I think since then the situation has changed radically. We do have, as the Georgian ambassador said, that the European Union has described the Georgian Black Sea cable as a project of mutual interest. I think we have to understand that as being bureaucratic inertia. You go through a system and it goes on and on and on, but the political reality has changed. Are any European institutions going to invest significant sums of money in Georgia at present? I don't think that that is at all likely, given the current attitudes of the Georgian Dream government. There are exceptions. There is an interesting development, 500 million, which is quite a considerable sum, to improve Armenian electricity connectivity with Georgia. And that's good. But the really big one is the question of what will happen to Azerbaijani electricity exports. Now, there are two developments in this regard. One is a practical move for connections between Nakhchivan and Turkey to improve, including a large-scale conversion unit so that all forms of electricity produced or available in Nakhchivan can be exported to Turkey. That's a synchronicity issue. But there's something more interesting that's happened in October. We have started to have serious assumptions by the Azerbaijanis that they are looking to the Trip corridor, the Zanzibar corridor, as a highway for their own renewable exports to Europe. The Minister of Energy, Mr. Shahbazov, said on the 20th, or was reported on the 20th of October to have said, through the Zanzibar corridor, regional interconnections, key to securing lasting peace, will diversify routes and markets for green energy from other regions of Azerbaijan, the Caspian Sea, and Central Asia, positioning Azerbaijan as a major energy transit hub in the region. Now, in this regard, it's important because he was talking about the harnessing of Azerbaijan's own renewable energy developments and those of Central Asia, in effect, the green energy corridor that would involve Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Azerbaijan's own green energy projects are significant. They are partnering primarily with Aqua of Saudi Arabia and Masdar of the UAE. The projects are extensive, but those projects only deliver enough to serve essentially as a substitute for gas development and deliveries on a modest scale within Azerbaijan itself, and a limited volume that might perhaps go through Nakhchivan to Turkey, not enough to make a significant difference. What makes a significant difference is another aspect that Mr. Shahbazov spoke of offshore wind power in the Caspian. Azerbaijan has potentially, forgive me if I've forgotten the exact figure, more than 150 gigawatts of potential offshore wind power. Most of that is deep offshore. That can be harnessed. It's technically perfectly feasible, but it's complex because it needs the kind of equipment that you actually have to manufacture these giant blades because they are simply too big to be transported by anything other than ship. And of course, in this kind of context, the only kind of shipping that would get to Azerbaijan would be via the Volga-Don system, and that is politically out of the question. So they have to develop their own industry. So we're not going to get it anytime soon. But they are serious and they're studying, working out how to get the necessary investment. Where do we go beyond this? I think we have to assume that Azerbaijan will push to develop its renewable energy resources, but that in terms of delivery to Turkey, it may start fairly soon. But in terms of delivery to Europe, it's a much longer term proposition, much more complex. But it can be done. But it's exactly the kind of thing that requires investment, but it does fit in with the energy transition very well indeed. So in that sense, I think renewable energy offers something. And if Azerbaijan can develop a route to get its electricity to Turkey and beyond to Europe, then it follows that if commercial circumstances allow, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan could do the same across the Caspian and into Azerbaijan. I'll leave it at that, and if you want to come back on the gas side, I'm happy to do so later.
Thank you very much, John. Certainly that question of the cost of manufacture of the wind turbines has been one of the key questions for looking at Azerbaijan's offshore wind potential and how to develop it. And I think that, even during my time there, it kind of brought home to me how relevant and important it would be to sort of think cooperatively across the whole Caspian to actually generate some economies of scale in that whole. And so leading on to that, I'm now going to turn to Mike Ritchie, who will, I think, lead off with thoughts from his recent visit to Turkmenistan and what that meant. Yeah.
Thank you, James, and thank you to the Caspian Policy Center for inviting me to speak to you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Ritchie. I'm the editor of Nefte Campus, which is one of the publications of the media and research group Energy Intelligence. And Nefte Campus itself actually covers sort of former Soviet Union, the energy business there. And we're, I'm in daily contact with our colleagues in Moscow, in the Moscow Bureau, Russian colleagues, which helps me get a good perspective on things and keep my feet on the ground, realizing that there's more than one way of looking at everything. So, but today, part of the coverage is that we make trips into the region, and at the end of October, I was fortunate enough to go to Turkmenistan, and I'd like today to give some insights on the energy challenges facing Turkmenistan. I was recently there for a week for the 30th anniversary of the Oil and Gas Turkmenistan Conference. Now, as most of you know, Turkmenistan is blessed with the fourth largest gas reserves in the world. Not bad for a country with a population estimated of around some 7 million. And how many times have we heard that Turkmenistan is fortunate to have a strategic location at the crossroads of Central Asia, Europe, and the Middle East? It's not that easy, though, is it? The reality, of course, is starkly different. To the north, Russia doesn't want or need any more gas. To the west, the hurdles in getting gas across the Caspian Sea to Europe look insurmountable, at least for now. To the east, China, Turkmenistan's biggest customer, accounting for 80% of Turkmenistan's gas production, looks to have sated its appetite for Turkmen gas for the time being, perhaps turning to Russia to fill the next tranche of demand. While to the south lie further geopolitical challenges. Just to get the much vaunted Trans-Caspian pipeline out of the way at this stage, at the conference, Maksat Babayev, the state minister and head of national company Turkmen Gas, when asked at the Ashgabat conference about the prospects for the Trans-Caspian, replied, this is a direct quote, "We are always interested in diversification in the European direction. We are ready to consider this project." He can hardly be non-committal, could he, about a project that's been on the drawing board for over 30 years? Really. Asked the same question, experts in the region believe it will happen one day. The harsh reality, in my view at least, is that a Trans-Caspian pipeline will not be built until Russia withdraws its opposition. And that's really unlikely to happen until there is a change of leadership in the Kremlin. So I'll leave that with you. I'm going to focus now on two aspects that dominate the energy scene in Turkmenistan. The Galkanish field, the world's largest onshore gas field, and the Tapi pipeline, which will run from the field via Afghanistan to Pakistan and India, which pretty much constitute one of the world's fastest growing energy markets. So there's enormous demand there and potential. Now, at the conference, Daniel Yergin, the energy expert and author of the prize, The History of the Oil Industry, told the conference that Galkanish, again a direct quote, is not just a national treasure. It is a strategic lever in the global energy system. And that's high praise indeed. In fact, we were told in Ashgabat that Gaffney Klein, the British auditors of the field, are preparing in the spring of next year to announce yet another increase in the immense reserves of Galkanish. I think it's the second largest gas field in the world, probably after the North Field shared between Qatar and Iran, where of course it's known as the South Pars. So the Tapi pipeline is designed to carry 33 billion cubic meters per year of gas. And I remember in the past that one Gaffney Klein expert said there was enough gas in Galkanish to supply 30 Tapis for 30 years. I mean, it's a phenomenal amount there. So let's deal first with the development of Galkanish, which is set out in 7 stages. The first is already off the ground. I think the second's underway. Stage 3 is the stage that is designated to supply Tapi with its full complement of 33 BCM a year. But delays to getting Tapi off the ground, however, mean that stage 4, which is designed to supply the local market in Turkmenistan, stage 4 will be executed first. So it'll come before stage 3. In a major step forward for Tapi and Galkanish, Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, better known as ADNOC, is negotiating to join stage 3 of Tapi as a join stage 3 of Galkanish development as a non-operating partner, offering finance and know-how, as I was told by the company on the sidelines of the conference. ADNOC is emerging as a key player in the Caspian region. It's farmed into the Petronas Block 1 in the Turkmen waters of the Caspian Sea and is a partner in the Absheron field in Azerbaijan, operated by France's Total Energy. ADNOC announced at the conference in Ashgabat that it is opening an office in the capital in Ashgabat to underpin its commitment. Now, ADNOC's presence highlights for me the growing significance of the role of the global South in the region. Other examples of South-South cooperation include financial backing from the Asia Development Bank, interest from Islamic financial institutions, and throughout the Middle East. Kazakhstan's national company Kazakh Gas has applied to join TAPI, and Azerbaijan's state oil company SOCAR has also offered to use its strong political connections in Afghanistan and Pakistan to support the pipeline. Even Russia's Gazprom, now deprived of its former main market in Europe, has shown interest in TAPI. And I think, as Mr. Nifti mentioned in the beginning, about sort of connectivity and so forth. This was echoed at the conference. Azerbaijan's Deputy Energy Minister, Orhan Zeynalov, said at the conference that the region was currently presented with a great platform to transform Central Asia and the South Caucasus into a single geopolitical space. Of course, there's a lot of momentum behind that at the moment with the Middle Corridor and the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. So Turkmenistan regularly declares it is open for foreign investment, but new entrants, let's be honest, have been few and far between. All the key players have been there for decades. Dragon Oil of Dubai recently celebrated its silver jubilee of 25 years. Petronas of Malaysia has been there for 30 years. ENI of Italy, 18 years. CNPC, the Chinese company, 19 years. The major Western oil majors, are pretty much absent. They were all there. I mean, over the years, I've covered every single one of them, knocking at the door in Turkmenistan, but unable to get the sort of goals they wanted, which actually was access to Galkanish. So moving on now, we've heard that Galkanish offers world-beating reserves, and experts believe gas demand will continue to grow. It's an abundant and reliable source of energy, and it also helps to balance the unreliability of wind and solar. But what about the TAPI pipeline? It has faced setbacks. Just this year, there have been border clashes between India and Pakistan, and more recently between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Yet the project continues to be driven forward by political will. The head of the TAPI pipeline company told us that work on laying the first section of the pipeline outside the borders of Turkmenistan, and that's important. And this first section is underway, and it's going to Herat in Afghanistan. And he said that the first gas would flow by the end of next year or early 2027. And he said the aim was to finalize that section to make it a showcase for the project. This is a $10 to $12 billion project. To make it a showcase for the project and to show that it can be implemented in this region, despite all the skepticism. One of the things that they're trying to do, that they're really following through on this. They're making, sending teams to and negotiating with the authorities in Herat about creating a market, about the electrification of, the gasification of the region as well. So that they can, it's a very poor area of Afghanistan with mainly small businesses, and how they can use that gas to help kickstart the economy in one of the poorest regions of that area. So the importance of the United States in this region obviously should be recognized too. To its credit, TAPI has hired a Washington law firm to lobby on its behalf in the corridors of power in the US, which can be difficult for most outsiders to understand. But when you're talking about TAPI, as one of the people from this law firm told us, she said, the elephant in the room is the Taliban government in Afghanistan, which incidentally has been recognized by Moscow, but not by Washington. And in her words, she said, from a US policy perspective, how do you support economic development in a country where the US government does not recognize the government of the country? So there's quite a task ahead of them there to get US backing. Now, one potential way forward is to promote the pipeline as supporting the development of one of the poorest parts of Afghanistan. As such, US support could be consistent with General License Number 20, which is issued by the Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, also known as OFAC, which allows for certain economic development in Afghanistan that would not primarily benefit the Taliban. Finally, looking ahead, let's give the last word to President Trump, but of course James will have the last word, as we know. President Trump could look favorably on a fossil fuel project like TAPI, which has potential benefit for US suppliers and services, and which would counteract Russian and Chinese influence in the region, at the same time as keeping Iranian gas out of the picture. So let's see what happens. Thank you, James. Yes, thank you.
We will indeed see. I think all of that really brings home to me the north-south component in all of this. Here in London and in Washington, we tend to think about connectivity with the region in terms of east-west, flowing Central Asia, South Caucasus, Turkey into Europe. And we heard a lot about that this morning. And that's kind of the mindset we're kind of in. But I think it's really important to step back every now and again and recognize that actually there's the countries themselves see a very strong north-south component to what they're trying to do in terms of connectivity, whether it be energy or transport. On your point about TAPI, I hear that Bet365 gambling site is taking bets on whether TAPI will be finished before the Trans-Caspian pipeline, or whether either will be finished at all.
John and I have got a bet on that the winner as to whether the Trans-Caspian or TAPI comes first, and the winner gets bought a beer in Osh. So one day it may happen.
I just hope you're both alive to enjoy that.
Yes.
And if I may now turn to Veronika Krakovic from the EBRD, who will set out, I think, the EBRD's energy strategy towards the region. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Veronika, I'm Regional Head of EBRD. It is a great pleasure to join you today and contribute to this important discussion on energy security and transition in the Caspian region. Let me begin with introducing the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The bank is headquartered in London, is owned by 77 countries from 5 continents, as well as the European Union and the EIB. The bank has a capital base of 34 billion euros and a AAA credit rating. EBRD invested over 200 billion euros in more than 7,000 projects since its establishment in 1991. Our value proposition is based on a very, very strong local presence. We have resident offices in all of the countries we operate, which is 36 economies. We support legal and regulatory changes to facilitate private investments. We provide capacity building to clients. And of course, the core of our business is debt and equity financing. We also provide local currency financing to mitigate currency risks, and we arrange for syndication. Energy security is not just about reliable supply. It is about resilience, diversification, and sustainability. The past few years has shown us how geopolitical shifts, climate change, and economic uncertainty can disrupt energy systems. For Central Asia, these challenges are compounded by the region's dependence on carbon-intensive generation and the urgent need to accelerate the transition to clean energy. At the EBRD, we have been working across Central Asia to support this transition. To date, EBRD has invested over euro 3.7 billion in the energy sector of Central Asia, with a portfolio of 84 projects. And we have supported 5 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity in Central Asia alone. This is a significant contribution to the region's decarbonization and energy security. Looking into countries, into specific countries, Kazakhstan has made important strides. With the BRD, the country introduced competitive auctions for renewables, which have attracted international investors and driven tariffs to record lows. Today, Kazakhstan has over 3 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity installed, and the government has committed to carbon neutrality by 2060. Our financing has supported solar, wind, and hydro projects, as well as critical grid upgrades to integrate renewables. The important focus that we have in working in the region is promoting renewable energy, and this is through providing financing to developers, but also through helping the governments to introduce regulatory framework, which would be bankable and attract investors, and through helping the countries introduce competitive auctions. In that sense, EBRD has supported auctions, setting up auctions in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Azerbaijan. Our Azerbaijan auction was awarded at COP, so we're very, very proud of that. So in Uzbekistan, Uzbekistan also stands out for its ambition and progress. The country faces growing energy demand and climate challenges, and it had set a very bold target of 25 gigawatts of renewables by 2030. EBRD is proud to be a key partner in this journey. Over the past 5 years, we have invested over $1 billion in renewable energy projects in Uzbekistan, adding over 4 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity to the energy mix. We supported the government in designing and implementing a robust auction framework, which has delivered record-breaking tariffs and attracted global players. Uzbekistan is also pioneering energy storage technologies and green hydrogen development, with projects already underway with the support of the EBRD investment. We are very proud to have supported the largest energy storage projects in Central Asia. We have just signed in October this year Sazagan Solar and BESS projects in Uzbekistan, which is 1 gigawatt solar capacity and over the 1 gigawatt hour of storage capacity, and it's the largest combined solar and storage capacity in Uzbekistan. And earlier this year, the pilot green hydrogen project achieved commercial operations dates. It is the first and the only green hydrogen project in Uzbekistan with EBRD as the sole financier of it. It's a 20 megawatt electrolyzer powered by a 52 megawatt wind power plant, and it's a partnership between Aqua Power and Uskime local fertilizer producer. So what is distinguishing the region is that the region is pioneering in so many ways, including novel technologies. In Tajikistan, EBRD invested into rehabilitation of Karakum hydropower plant. It was recently completed and inaugurated. It increased the capacity of one of the largest hydropower plants in the region, and also into upgrading metering and billing infrastructure across the country, delivering reduction of losses. We also supported CASA 1000 transmission interconnection, which once completed will allow export of electricity from Tajikistan and Kyrgyz Republic and Pakistan. When we look into the region, of course, it's driven by the resource potential. Tajikistan and Kyrgyz Republic have significant hydro power potential, and that's why the decisions that the governments made was to prioritize hydropower. And Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan as well, and Mongolia have energy sectors which are dominated by fossil fuel powered technologies, and they are looking to decarbonize, and they are also looking to introduce renewables. Important component of introducing renewables is that it allows countries to increase foreign direct investment because the existing and historical generation is state-owned. And basically, the introduction of renewables is a way to invite global international players into the countries, get new experience and get new investment, and without the need to involve sovereign budget, because in many countries, investments in generations would have otherwise required sovereign support in terms of lending, but creating a bankable regulatory framework essentially allows for private investment and private financing. And of course, regional cooperation projects are very important. I already mentioned CAS 1000, Southern Gas Corridor that was already mentioned during today's discussions is also a very important project for the regional cooperation, and EBRD is the largest financier for this project. We provided financing for TANAP and for TAP, and it's over $1 billion of EBRD funding alone. And on top of that, we arranged for syndication. And of course, an important highlight of regional cooperation is the plant under development, Kambarata 1 hydropower plant in the Kyrgyz Republic. It is a project that embodies the spirit of partnership. It has a plant capacity above 1.8 gigawatts and a reservoir of above 5 billion cubic meters. It will provide essential balancing capacity for scaling renewables across the region. It will generate over 5.76 terawatt hours annually, covering a quarter of Kyrgyzstan electricity needs, while also releasing additional water for irrigation in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. This is a very important project for energy security and water security combined, and a foundation for regional development. And very importantly, Kambarata 1 has been developed jointly by Kyrgyz Republic, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, making it a landmark in regional cooperation. And it's supported by World Bank and is expected, and by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And of course, we expect it to be developed based on the highest environmental and social standards. In terms of And we see Kambarata as a catalyst for integrating regional electricity markets, enabling cross-border trade and unlocking the full potential for solar and wind in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. Looking at the region beyond Central Asia, of course, Azerbaijan is an important contributor to development of renewable energy, and EBRD has financed more than around 1 gigawatt of renewable energy in Azerbaijan, with the most recent projects around 700 megawatts signed at COP last year in Baku. And that's it shows a very important development, because we started this work in Azerbaijan when we signed TANAP financing for Azerbaijan. And at the time, it was 2017, we signed an MOU with the Ministry of Energy of Azerbaijan, which mentioned development of renewable energy and auctions. And I think at the time it was very highly aspirational. And the technology advanced so fast, and obviously it's the development of renewable energy is very much driven by the declining cost of technology, basically making renewable energy affordable, something that was not the case maybe 15 years ago. And the tariffs achieved in the most recent tariffs are around $3 for solar, and we saw even lower tariffs before. So that's an important contribution to development of renewable energy. And also we financed wind power in Georgia, and of course hydropower in Georgia, and grid connections in Armenia, and also renewable energy in Armenia. So to conclude, the energy transition in the Caspian region is not only possible, it is really happening, but it requires ambition, cooperation, and investment. At EBRD, we are proud to be part of this journey, helping the region navigate new realities and build a sustainable future.
Thank you very much, Veronica. And amazingly, we do have a bit of time left, which is great. I had I'll open the floor to questions, but I had just a couple I wanted to throw at the panelists here. We've heard a lot about the Caspian contribution, the wider Caspian contribution to European energy security. whether that be fossil fuels or increasingly renewables. And we've heard references to TANAP and TAP and EBRD's role. And of course, EBRD doesn't finance fossil fuel projects anymore, as I understand it. And one of the big issues, of course, for Azerbaijan and Europe is whether or not any more Azerbaijani gas can come to Europe. We've heard already today from Gunel that the Southern Gas Corridor is now providing gas to 12 European countries. And one of the big questions out there, of course, is the expansion of the Southern Gas Corridor and whether that will be possible and who will provide the financing for that, clearly not EBRD. So my question really, I suppose, for John is what sense you have of the future of the Southern Gas Corridor and whether it's realistic to expect that Azerbaijan will be able to produce a lot more gas and provide it to Europe in line with, I think, the 2022 agreement with the European Union. And the second question I have maybe is more for Veronica, is we've talked, as I say, a lot about how the Caspian producers can support, I suppose, their own energy security, but also European energy security. I'm sort of curious about about the energy security of the non-oil and gas producers. We've heard earlier from Georgia and hydropower and Armenia and nuclear power. So I'm interested to know Veronica's views on, I suppose, renewable energy and the energy security for the Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan in particular. But John, may I start with you? If Mike wants to jump in on that one as well. I know you've covered the whole Southern Gas Corridor question in reporting.
Bottom line is very simple. Azerbaijan has the physical resources in place to increase gas production quite substantially. But the principal projects with which they could do that, namely expansion of the Shakhtinis gas field beyond the current modest program for stabilizing, or fresh investment in developing the deep gas reserve underneath the ACG oil field, are complex, expensive projects. As far as we can tell, they are perfectly commercially reasonable. But to get the finance from an Azerbaijani perspective, they need to be sure that there's a market. And the logical way for them to get the market is long-term contracts. Now, in fact, this is not necessarily the classic form of long-term contract. I've been told that as little as 10 years or even less would be quite sufficient to get it through. But you have an EU antipathy from the Commission to the concept of long-term contracts. You also have the question of whether or not there can be external investment. Now, that external investment is possible if you start thinking of companies like ADNOC getting involved in upstream investment and not as operator. There are other sources of finance. But in general, the bottom line is a need for contract security of some kind in order to justify Azerbaijan producing the resources without the fear that as EU projections of a decline in demand or a termination in the increase come into reality. I happen to think that the projections are wrong. I think there will be a continuing rise in demand for gas in Europe in general for quite some time to come, for a couple of decades. But we don't have a feeling from the Commission yet of the need for gas. And we do have an absolute straitjacket for Azerbaijan right now. It has reached the maximum it can produce by squeezing everything that it can do into the system. Indeed, in fractional terms, Azerbaijani gas exports are actually declining. It's of a minor amount, but they have pushed everything they possibly can to help Europe out in the last 2 to 3 years. And they've reached the limit of what they can do. And we see this in the fact that they now deliver less gas to Georgia than they used to do, because more gas is actually going through Georgia to other customers. And with destinations as far afield as Syria through swaps or Hungary, Azerbaijan is playing a crucial part in gas provision. And that role is needed for several more years until, and maybe even beyond, the coming on stream of the new fields in the gas in the Black Sea. So I'll stop there, but I will say somehow the European Commission has to address the issue of longer term contracts. Thank you.
Did you have 2 sentences to add, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I agree with everything John said. Just a couple of things to add to that. Whenever I've been fortunate enough to have these discussions, sit in a large panel with the president of Azerbaijan, and the two issues he always singles out are the problems with long-term guarantees and investment. So if Europe wants the gas, it's going to have to sign up for a long term and also put some money up front as well. The agreement you mentioned with the EU, the MOU that was signed with von der Leyen in 2022, that was to double supplies to Europe by 2027. Well, better get a move on because it's fast running out. Now, the Southern Corridor and Azerbaijan, right, in terms of energy security for Europe, it's now it's got something like 11, 12, I'm not even sure what the latest number is, of customers in Europe. Most of it goes to Italy, I think, through TAP. They account for something like 15% of Italy's power demand, I think, probably. And but the thing is with TAP that one of the things, I don't know if John's got a better idea on this, but I'm not sure there's been a lot of interest in, one of the things with TAP, it's designed to produce 10 BCM, but there is written into its constitution sort of that it can be doubled fairly relatively easily with not too much further investment if there's interest. And that interest has to come through sort of binding and non-binding rounds of interest in producing more, sending more gas. I'm not sure whether that's come about, John, has it? Do you know?
I don't think it has, because we still don't have the gas that can be input into the system. And I think that TAP, as present, they've tweaked the system. So the TAP is now operating at its current sort of maximum capacity of handling 11 to 12 BCM a year for a pipeline that was supposed to carry 10. And the question I was going to ask Veronica is, have you been approached by TAP with regard to whether or not, should they get interest, there would be money available for additional compression to increase capacity to up to 20 BCM?
Thank you. So maybe perhaps starting with Southern Gas Corridor. So we would not be looking to finance or consider financing gas exploration. But according to our current energy strategy, we can consider financing gas pipelines. That, of course, has lots of requirements. It requires compatibility with Paris Agreement. It requires compatibility with green fuels such as green hydrogen, because the idea would be to avoid it becoming a stranded asset in the future, and that if there is an expansion, we would expect that once green fuels are becoming more available, at some point it can just be converted, perhaps, from using gas to green fuels. I think these discussions would obviously need to be predated by the discussions about the contracts in relation to delivery of Azerbaijani gas to Europe and market tests, etc. So on your question, James, on energy security in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, so the hydropower systems of these countries are currently dominated by state-owned hydropower, and both countries and the resources are really very big. Climate change does have an impact on them because not all of the some of the hydropowers are reservoir-based, some of them are not, and of course, climate change does impact the amount of water available. This is a separate work stream. We are helping, for instance, Tajikistan in basically assessing their climate resilience. As part of one of our projects, we help them to digitalize all of the historic water data in relation to hydropower and cascades that we finance. So, but both of these countries, they as I said before, solar and wind became so affordable in the recent years, and there were examples of great success, including on the tariffs, very low tariffs achieved in Uzbekistan. Recent solar projects achieved in tenders tariffs of 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And there were tariffs below, demonstrated by both Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan in earlier projects. And of course, it increases the interest that these countries have to attracting private participation. So with both Kyrgyz Republic and Tajikistan, we are working on assessing renewable energy regulation, how they can introduce the regulations that would attract private participation. And with both, we are discussing auctions. Of course, in Tajikistan, it's looking into large hydropower projects. In Tajikistan, they are developing Ragun hydropower, and Kyrgyz Republic, in cooperation with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, announced a very large Kambarata 1 hydropower plant. And it's a first project of this kind, which is developed in the region jointly by 3 countries. And from that sense, it will be very, very a landmark project. And of course, when we look into the region, all countries are so concerned about energy security. And that results with huge investments in energy generation in individual countries. But of course, there is an understanding that regional trade, and in particular hydropower, could really serve as a mitigant. And the countries are right now connected through Central Asia grid, and they already trade. Uzbekistan and Tajikistan trade, Kyrgyz Republic and Uzbekistan trade electricity. Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan are connected through Central Asia. And at some point, CASA 1000 will be built. And CASA 1000 was originally designed to allow export of hydropower from Tajikistan and Kyrgyz Republic only during summer season, because there were so much shortages in winter that it was considered not appropriate, basically, to export electricity. But but now that the electricity, that the energy investments increase, all of the countries have now huge interest in using this infrastructure during winter time, and it concerns basically Tajikistan, Kazakh, and Kyrgyz Republic, but other countries in the region as well. There is a technically possibility to, the countries interconnected, and there is technically a possibility to sell electricity through the CASA 1000 once constructed. So to sum up, I think the way for energy security is regional trade, because even with Tajikistan and Kyrgyz Republic developing hydropower, they are still so much dependent on climate change impacts. And of course, there is a question of heating, which still requires gas. So it's always a trade, and it's not always it's not only Tajikistan, Kyrgyz Republic exporting electricity, but it's importing gas-fired power for instance, from Uzbekistan when they need it. So trade and cooperation will remain very important. Thank you.
It's a complicated mix, but I think that the point about the importance of regional cooperation is very, very well said. But in energy and water. So we're running over. I'm going to ask the organizer, David, here, whether or not he's happy to let it run over a bit more and to take a question or two, or do you want to stop now for coffee? Are you happy for us to take a question or two if there are?
Yes, but we want to have a short coffee break because we've already had one, and we need to be back to welcome the two virtual guests that we have coming on at 11:35. So, if you can allow a certain amount of time for a quick coffee and start again sharply at 11:35.
Okay, if it's just 15 minutes, in that case, I won't take questions, but if you do have questions, approach the panelists, please, in the margins at the coffee table. Thank you very much, and thanks very much to the panelists for session one. And a hush descended over the room as if by magic. That's amazing, and I didn't have to bang the glass or anything. So congratulations on your timekeeping, everybody, for this session. So session two... strategic partnerships and common benefits. And we've heard in session one and with the ambassadors panel, we've heard about some of the new realities, the challenges and the developments. And now, I think we've heard about some of them already, but this panel really is aimed, I hope, at identifying solutions and opportunities to work jointly on energy security. So the context, of course, is, we've been discussing earlier, for the Europeans, in the short to medium term, remove Russian oil and gas from the systems, long term to move towards net zero. Whereas the Caspian producers, for them, there's a tension there, because for the Caspian producers, it's to maximize revenues as long as possible into the future. But the Caspian countries, as I think it's been touched upon, are also affected by climate change, especially as regards river flows and rainfall. And I think that is leading to increasing regional cooperation, certainly in Central Asia, with hopefully also across the Caspian, with the Caucasus as well. We've heard already about the C5 becoming the C6, issues about the Middle Corridor again, transiting both Central Asia and the South Caucasus. We've heard a lot about the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace agreement and the opportunities that will open up for greater connectivity to Europe. So opportunities for the region, for Europe, for the United Kingdom, of course, as well. So we have, for this panel, we do have two people online, and I'm hoping that we can call upon them first. So Javlon Vakhabov, Managing Director, International Institute for Central Asia, who is hopefully suddenly going to appear, and there he is, as if by magic. So welcome, Javlon, and if you can sort of kick things off for us, that would be great.
Very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for having me at this panel.
Please just jump in and let us have your thoughts.
Wonderful. I wish I could have joined this discussion in person, but due to my commitments here in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, I was unable to come to London. Dear friends, like many countries around the world, so the states of Central Asia are rapidly moving toward the green economy now. And this shift is not accidental. It is driven by a combination of powerful regional and global forces that are reshaping our development trajectory. And the region understands that its traditional resource base, oil, gas, and even water, is finite and increasingly vulnerable to climate change, population growth, so environmental degradation, and the pressures of economic expansion. And today, a new economic reality is taking shape in Central Asia. For instance, through the efforts of all Central Asian governments, our combined GDP has grown almost to 2.5 times over the past 8 years, reaching more than $500 billion. And our external trade has more than doubled, rising to more than $250 billion. Beside that, our population is growing rapidly, now exceeding 80 million people. There are some projections indicating that by 2030, this number might increase up to 100 million people in Central Asia. So with respect to electricity demand, so by 2030, electricity demand across the region is expected to increase by 30 to 40%. And Uzbekistan alone anticipates annual growth in electricity consumption of around 7%. It's a huge, significant amount for the country, which is still opening up to the world and exploring new industries in the economy. So beside that, all Central Asian countries have obligations under the Paris Accord, which require measurable reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in alignment with global decarbonization pathways. So at the same time, so the region understands the risks of overdependence on fossil fuels, both in terms of economic volatility to geopolitical exposure. So in global energy markets are undergoing profound transformation with investors and major consumers shifting towards low carbon energy sources. And if Central Asia does not adapt, it risks being left behind in emerging green supply chains and losing access to export markets in the future. So that's why transitioning to green energy is increasingly boosting Central Asia's investment appeal. So, for instance, Kazakhstan's nearly $4 billion in green deals at COP29, Uzbekistan's more than 22 billion euros in renewable investment, and Tajikistan's goal of 100% green electricity by 2032 all signal a shift that attracts global capital. And there are still several existing challenges in energy security in Central Asia, and much of its energy infrastructure, including power plants and transmission lines, was built during the Soviet era and is now 30, 50 years old, so leading to inefficiencies, so high losses and frequent outages. And estimates suggest that $40–50 billion is needed to modernize the regional energy systems, including grid reconstruction and sustainable supply measures. So with respect to water energy management, I should also mention that this area adds another layer of complexity. So upstream countries prioritize hydropower generation, while downstream states like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan require water for summer irrigation. So thus, this might be carefully coordinated. And environmental and market factors also impact energy security. So continued reliance on fossil fuels contributes to pollution, particularly coal in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. So while dependence on external suppliers exposes countries to global price fluctuations. So therefore, the countries of Central Asia are actively advancing energy cooperation, both within the region and with partners beyond, strengthening their role in the global energy landscape. And this was a hot topic in the Tashkent C6 summit, which was recently held under Uzbekistan's chairmanship. And in this regard, I would like to draw your attention at least at three key priority areas where we are currently collaborating with our partners across the region of Central Asia and beyond. First, hydropower. And as you might be aware, over the past 8 years, significant progress has been made in Central Asia's hydropower sector, which once a source of tension. And Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan are cooperating on the construction of this well-known Kambarata Dam project. So with Turkmenistan, agreements on the rational use of Amudarya improved shared water management and reduce environmental risks. And here I would like also to mention this well-known project, a flagship initiative known as the CASA 1000, connecting Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan with Afghanistan and Pakistan, exporting surplus hydropower to energy deficit markets. Second is related to conventional energy. So yet, even as we accelerate the shift toward a greener economy, we must recognize that conventional energy continues to play a major role in the region's economic landscape. So today, around 90% of electricity in Uzbekistan itself, and 85% in neighboring Kazakhstan, and 75% in Turkmenistan is still generated from fossil fuels. And one important project is the long-standing Tapi gas pipeline connecting Turkmenistan with Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. And this project remains a key symbol of regional connectivity and cooperation. I should also mention that the Turkmen section was completed last year in 2024. So while construction in Afghanistan and Pakistan is underway, it's a good and very promising signal. So for the region, for Afghanistan itself, which neighbors to Central Asia. But we're also actively investing in Afghanistan's energy sector, and I mean Uzbekistan, which is developing the local gas field with almost $1 billion investment, tapping reserves of up to 3 trillion cubic meters. And of course, we are unable to absorb this amount of natural gas sites in Afghanistan. So definitely, other players will be invited as well. At the same time, regional countries are also modernizing their electricity networks. Central Asia is improving grid stability, expanding cross-border trade, and laying the foundations for a more integrated regional electricity. And number three is pretty new area which we are still discovering together with our partners, and this is about nuclear energy. And this is completely new, as I said, an emerging trend in Central Asia. As you might be aware, the region holds about 20% of the world's uranium reserves, so making nuclear energy highly attractive. So to meet growing demand for electricity, Uzbekistan plans an integrated plant reactors, starting construction in 2026 and reaching 15 billion kilowatt annually by 2035. So quite ambitious, but we believe doable goal to achieve. And the same is happening in neighboring Kazakhstan. And this country's first modern plant is a nearly preparatory stage, with construction expected around 2029 and commissioning by the end of 2030. And Kyrgyzstan, by the way, is also exploring nuclear energy, having signed a 2022 memorandum with Rosatom, Russia, to study 2 50-megawatt small reactors. In these countries, so this might be another area where our partners could explore more opportunities to cooperate with others. So at this moment, I would like just to stop, and I stand ready to any questions you might have at this panel. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much, Javlon. I think that was a very interesting overview of Central Asians and how they're actually increasingly working together to help on their own energy security. So it's not just a question of how they export energy to the rest of the world, but also how they themselves are dealing with any problems they have in energy security. And I think one of the points there wasn't mentioned directly, but the increasing role of nuclear in the region, of course, and then that leads into the whole question of the role of Russia. You mentioned Rosatom, but I think that's kind of one of those rather longer-term geopolitical questions as well, how they deal with that relationship, the energy relationship with Russia there. But thank you very much indeed for that. I'm now going to switch over to Roger Kangas, also online. I will say that Roger was due originally to be in the first session here in London. However, he wasn't able to make it, and I decided not to wake him up at 4:30 in the morning, but give him an extra hour or two of sleep. So we pushed him into the second session, really, and he's looking very, very sort of dapper and fresh-faced, I have to say. It's so early in the morning. But Roger, I think, is going to talk more about energy security in the physical and defence terms. So thank you, Roger, very much. Roger, off you go.
Okay, thank you very much, James. And yes, I do wish I were there. I should say that, and I would also be helping you chair a panel, but next time around, inshallah, I'll be able to make it. I should say it's also good to see Ambassador Vahabov. We've missed each other when you've come to the U.S. I've usually been out of the country, so sometime we'll be in the same place at the same time. But again, it's good to see you online. And I also should say I thank you for the comments you made, because that they segue quite well into the remarks that I'm about to make. And also, I should say, you touched on a number of issues I was going to raise, or at least bring up. I'm glad you did, so I can focus specifically on the security component of the sort of strategic partnerships working in the region on energy development. And we should say, when we look at energy, we're still thinking in terms of traditional, hydrocarbon-based energy, oil and gas, and the transit lines for those. But you're absolutely right. As we increasingly look at green energy and think in terms of the transit networks, the electricity grid that will come of hydropower, for example, this is going to be most important. So some important issues to raise. I should also say that I'm speaking in my own capacity. I can bring up my affiliation with Georgetown University, more importantly with the Caspian Policy Center. And given your location, I can say that I've been a non-resident fellow of IISS, so it's good to see Arundel House, at least online. So when it comes to security, and I'm taking this largely from an American perspective and perhaps some of my own experiences. In these days, it's actually easier to frame it and to frame security as an American. We think in terms of the geopolitical considerations. From Washington, these are less dramatic. Those are going to be put into other baskets, so to speak. And it's really more about creating business opportunities, creating a stable structure so foreign investors, and I should say American investors, but this is also applicable to European, Asian, and even Central Asian investors, where it's easier for them to be present, productive, and prosperous. Energy security is seen as both a national interest, but a commercial interest. And this latter element, I keep stressing, but it is much more important today in Washington than in past years. But geopolitics doesn't disappear. And obviously, we have to think in terms of the physical security of infrastructure and what this may mean for these investors and what this may mean for the success of the various routes that Ambassador Vahabov mentioned, but also those of other speakers earlier in this conference. And, I would say, well, first you have to ask that rather difficult but important question. Who would like to see the projects fail? Who would like to see these routes disrupted? It's easy to point a finger at countries and say, well, Russia would like to see it fail or stopped, or Iran would like to see it fail or stopped. We could discuss non-state actors. Are there certain extremist groups that may want to see a route disrupted? Islamic State Khorasan, for example, looking at routes such as TAPI or CASA 1000 that could be helpful to Afghanistan and also broader regional security. Might they also envision disruption to hurt their adversaries? Absolutely. These are issues that one can bring up. But I'd also caution in saying, are we looking at the physical expropriation or taking over of certain routes? And honestly, no. When I think in terms of nation states or other actors involved, it's more about disrupting projects. It's more about using other means to challenge these efforts to prohibit them from being profitable as hoped for or planned. This can be something simple as a tax on critical infrastructure. Pipeline routes are the easiest things to target. I remember the 2008 Russian invasion of Georgia, where the discussion was, would Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan be in jeopardy? And indeed it was. Now, fortunately, the Russians did not strike it, but the possibility existed, and companies worked out scenarios where, were that pipeline to be disrupted, how quickly could it come back online? If it was a minor disruption, might it be offline for a day, 3 days, a week? If it was a significant disruption, could that last upwards of a month? And the cost calculus at the time, this is 17 years ago, was in the neighborhood of the single-digit billions of dollars of lost revenues if that disruption took place in a month's time. And so, looking at a physical action and seeing how this could be done, well, that's clearly important. And I should add, my own experience working on the CENTGAS project, the first effort of taking Turkmen gas through Afghanistan into Pakistan and India. The discussion really was about, could the Taliban, which at the time was just coming into power, could they actually be trusted in providing security for this pipeline? That obviously was never realized. The project was stopped in the late 90s and then restarted later on. But the notion of non-state actors attacking that route, of course, always came up. Could there be other less physical attacks on pipelines? Absolutely. Cyber attacks, particularly on certain stations or facilities associated not just with oil and gas pipelines, but other infrastructure projects, electricity grids, etc. This is unfortunately a common phenomena in the world. We see these disruptions take place. We've seen them, I should say, in European countries. We've seen it even in the United States. Ukraine is dealing with this on a regular basis. And of course, here you're looking not just at state capacity to address this, but private capacity. And that will be, something I'll bring up in just a moment. But just, lastly, could there also be political or other efforts to disrupt transit? And in here, I'm looking, I mentioned earlier Iran, and I'm actually trying to look at it objectively and not see it in this bigger geopolitical U.S.-Iran competition, but rather Iran as a regional actor. And they have raised concerns about, for example, the TRIP, the Zangezur corridor route, and potential trade routes that would take products from Azerbaijan through Armenia into Turkey and beyond. And their concern is, while unfortunately focused on the value that this route may have, which could include, of course, energy, their concern is that it may disrupt their own trade northward. And if that were happen, of course, they would protest. They would approach Russia or other countries and finding ways to ensure that their options northward exist. And when we think of north-south trade, this is going to come in as a factor. So I throw this out as different ways in which states or non-state actors can disrupt facilities. Okay, well, what about external actors? How do we solve this problem? And I'll sort of end with a couple of quick comments here. The European Union, for example, has clear interests in ensuring proper security of the various assets discussed. Likewise, Turkey. And I know that these have been discussed. And my hunch is that as we continue our conversation today and beyond, specific measures could be addressed. What about the U.S.? And you think about it with the corridor, the agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, for example, in August of this year, part of that conversation were references to guaranteeing security. well, what exactly does this mean? And here I'm going to caution all in the audience to move away from thinking of it in terms of state security, a statist approach, rather creating opportunities for private sectors, but also offshoring, or a term of art that's used often here, burden shifting, taking the responsibilities of the region and putting it in the region. And so when we think of this, and I'll take the TRIP or Zangezur corridor as an example, almost immediately, just for one country, Armenia, the U.S. promised about $150 million in assistance, sort of a loan structured assistance in helping security on this route. The private company NVIDIA is promising over $500 million, 3 times plus the amount is going to come from the private sector. So this gives you a small snapshot of the approach that's being taken here. It's more about private companies and more about local capacity. We saw this expressed in the C5+1 summit here in Washington last month. We even saw this in other discussions amongst the Central Asian states themselves in the recent C5 meeting that brought in Azerbaijan, also the CIS summit and others. And I know, some of the comments Ambassador Vahabov made apply in this as well. What I would say, this is not necessarily a bad thing. And just to sort of finish up, the operationalization of security requirements has to come from the region. It's not saying the outsiders have to absolve themselves from any responsibility. Obviously, everyone wants to see the transit of energy resources, both hydrocarbon but also renewables, as they come online and as they are part of the broader East-West network. It's not just about commercial trade, but it's about energy trade. As this evolves and expands, external actors will want to see this as stable and secure. But obviously, as I'm looking down the road, at least for the immediate future, I'm seeing the onus or the burden of this is going to be put on the actors themselves in the region. With that, James, I'll turn the microphone and camera back to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Roger. I think that's very, very illuminating. It's clear to me anyway that the Russia-Ukraine conflict has really brought the sort of the physical security side of it into sharp focus, whether it be the sort of destruction of Nord Stream 2 or the kind of damage done to the Ukrainian energy networks, or even the damage done to Novorossiysk loading terminal, which of course then affected all the oil exports from Kazakhstan. And then we've also seen an awful lot of hybrid warfare taking place with the cutting of cables. And I think that's increased the focus on, these sort of damage that could be done to wider energy supplies. Even disinformation. I mean, we were talking earlier about TAP, and I remember very well, when the final kilometre or two into Italy was being held up by protests, which many attributed to Russian disinformation campaigns about beaches and olive groves in Puglia. So I think that it is a wide spectrum of problems that can be caused, whether sort of direct damage or through other means. And just feel that that focus, we haven't had a sort of a real focus on that for until quite recently. So thank you very much indeed for setting all of that out, Roger, and thank you especially for having United Kingdom flag in your behind you. that was the. So on this occasion, I'm now actually going to do things properly and go along the corridor, go along the table from to the nearest person, Charles Hendry, former energy minister and trade envoy as well for Britain, to talk hopefully about the UK role and the opportunities that for the UK in the region and supporting the region.
James, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to speak at this conference once again, and congratulations on a tremendous range of speakers and a wide range of really important topics. I think you touched on there, James, a really useful word of warning, and I think we need to recognise that the modern warfare is changing, and a large part of that is going to be how countries can inflict maximum economic damage on others who are either directly involved in that conflict or tangentially involved in the most untraceable way. and we're not doing anything like enough to focus on those security risks. If you look at the extent to which we monitor the integrity and safety of subsea cables and subsea pipelines, then we are way short of where we need to be in this current new set of circumstances. I'm going to talk primarily about areas for cooperation. The best cooperation happens when there is mutual benefit. So I'm going to start off by looking at some of the things that we're looking for in the UK and Europe, and then broaden that out into how that creates opportunities for commercial activity. The way that we're looking at our energy security is changing, and that's significantly driven by the role for gas. We've gone through a period of a few years where the gas price has been high and volatile and unpredictable. And we're now moving into a period where it's much more smooth and much lower. As LNG exports go up by 50% over the course of this decade, then it is quite probable that LNG gas prices will come down by 40%. And so that the changing role for gas means that we need to look in a different way at our energy security. And we're seeing within our own government, they haven't yet reached agreement. Very strong disalignment between Ed Miliband as Energy Secretary and Rachel Reeves and the Prime Minister. But we will, I think, inevitably drawn to a position where we will move away from an absolute net zero commitment, and we'll move to something which is more flexible, and we'll move to something where there is a clearer, enduring role for gas in the mix. And to recognize that gas is the cheapest and the most secure way, not just of providing the backup to a system which is increasingly using renewables, but also works alongside our own policies to support the North Sea, not yet in place from this government, but something which I think will still have to happen, and also looking at how we power AI and data centers. A lot of people talk about the importance of tying in the data centers with next generation small modular reactors, but what they miss is the time disconnect. People want to be building the data centers now, and those SMRs will not be commercially available for a decade. So in the meantime, they're going to have to look towards gas power generation. Now, all of this opens up tremendous areas of cooperation, some already there, some which can emerge. And so let's look first of all at the issues of our energy resilience. The main LNG imports are going to be coming increasingly from Qatar, doubling their capacity, huge growth in the US and Africa. But there is an important role in European security for the gas coming in from Azerbaijan in particular. The pipeline to Turkmenistan has been talked about for as long as I've been involved in this sector. It doesn't appear to have moved forward very much in the last 15 years. But at least the words which we heard from the conference at OGT last week give some grounds that they are addressing this in a more constructive way. But this would be an enormous prize, I think, for Turkmenistan and for Europe more generally. There is, therefore, I think, a natural interest in looking at how we can develop that more openly. We're in a strange position where the Foreign Office is not allowed to support British oil and gas companies. This was one of Boris Johnson's great ideas as a purity test in the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow. So even in Azerbaijan, where the largest British company and one of the largest investors in the country is BP, or Shell in Kazakhstan, that the embassies are not allowed to support their activities because this was intended to show that we will be moving away from engagement in oil and gas. That policy is crazy in the current environment. I don't see it likely to change in the short term. So we've got to find other routes of supporting dialogue, perhaps through chambers of commerce, certainly through events like this, in order to encourage the sort of participation and the dialogue which is going to be important. The scope for electricity transfers as well, as John Roberts and others have been talking about, again should be part of that. This has moved from being a sector which was really incredibly complicated and slow some years ago to something which is becoming increasingly routine. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the UK only had one interconnector, which was to France. We now have two to France, one to Denmark, one to Germany, two to Norway, two to Ireland. And that we're looking at connections to Iceland, transatlantically. There's been discussions about having an interconnector to Morocco. This is now a routine established technology, and the UK can certainly work with countries which want to advance this. I certainly take on board John's warning about the difficulty of finding investment in Georgia at the moment, but finding safe routes for bringing power through into Europe would enhance the whole the wider aspects of European security. And we need to recognise that these are going to be challenging years. The people say that we should come through this winter all right, but next winter our gas is going to be stressed. We're going into this winter with gas storage in Europe 10% down on where it would normally be expected to be at this time in the winter, and that we're also seeing the massive destruction of Ukrainian gas storage, and so the pressures on the system this year and in future years is going to be intense. So finding those additional routes of supply becomes an important part of this process. But I think we can go much further than that. It's very encouraging to hear from some of the speakers about the pace of investment in renewables and the growth of renewable generation. We have in the UK grown from 7% of our electricity coming from renewables in 2010 to over 50% today. And in nuclear, and regularly over 70% of our electricity is from clean sources. And so we have achieved more, I think, than most people thought was possible. And we would love to partner with other countries to help them achieve some of those same growth and potential. And I think that if you look at how you develop offshore wind in the Caspian, we have developed the largest, I think the first, second and third largest offshore wind farms in the world, which I happen to chair one through to its planning process. And that we therefore know how to do these, we know how to drive the cost down. And I think I'm probably more optimistic than John about the supply chain. For the blades manufacturing facility in the UK, that was open within about 3 years of being approved as a concept. And it is not something which requires particularly skilled labour, and so it is something which can easily be developed within the region. In other areas, the UK is doing incredible work now on what's called demand-side response, how you smooth out the peaks in demand. By the end of this decade, we will have 1 million households where their electric vehicles will be used not just to provide them with clean way of travelling around, but at peak times, they will be selling power back to the grid. This is a technology which is established and is now being rolled out. You move consumers from being passive recipients to people who actively can trade and engage in delivering the solutions. And that these things are always more difficult in a very well-developed, mature economy like the UK, and much more straightforward to introduce in economies which are fast-growing and emerging, as so many of those are within the Caspian region. And so these are areas, again, where companies can help to participate. In UK will never be the most natural place for having solar. For much of the year, we have to have battery backup to ensure that the power generated during the day can be used at night time when the greatest demand is. But for many of the countries around the Caspian, that they will be able to have a much more direct correlation between using solar power when it's at its peak generation in the day and when also some of the highest demand for air conditioning is in hot summers. And so that the rollout of solar, the rollout potentially of battery storage as well, we don't own those technologies, but we know how to install them and that we can help to accelerate that progress. And then more generally on electrification, this isn't just about the power system. This is about how do we electrify transport, not just private vehicles, but trucks and trains as well. It's also about how do we electrify heat. And that I think what we're going to have to do, if we're going to let our own net zero target slip a bit, is we've got to be more actively engaged elsewhere around the world to help other people accelerate more quickly. So the global gain on decarbonisation is greater, and it's a lower cost to the British taxpayer. As we look at how we deliver those sectors, then we've also got to look at those supply chains. That there is a real problem, I think, growing in Europe about the over-reliance on critical minerals from a few places. But it's not just the sources where those critical minerals come from, it's where they're processed. 90% of the processing of lithium is done in China. And by the end of the decade, China will need that for its own domestic vehicle manufacture and battery manufacture. So it will be less available to export, and we should be much further down the curve in Europe about building our own facilities. But we can also do that with halfway houses for people to do the first stage of the processing work, and that could be done in the Caspian region, can then be brought through to be finished in the Western markets. But we should be looking very collaboratively and very constructively at how we make that all happen. And the final point I'll make is not to do with the technology, not to do with the sectors, but it's about people. And that goes two ways. We have an enormous number of brilliant young people from the countries around the Caspian who come to British universities. We absolutely should encourage that, because the skills which they learn here, the long-term partnerships, the friendships, the trust, that all leads to the right relationships going forward. But it also goes the other way. When I helped take David Cameron as Prime Minister to Kazakhstan, David, you were there, that he was met in Aktau by a bunch of burly Scottish oil workers. In all of the countries around this region, you will find British expats who have worked there for many years, who love those areas, who love the communities, often find the loves of their life there and settle there as well. That two-way trade in skills and human activity is something which we absolutely should continue to encourage. So a lot of this is about long-term ambitions and long-term horizons. Not all of it will happen, but there is never going to be a better time than now for looking at mega projects. The way that President Trump has changed the thinking about this, the TRIP project, even putting his own name into it, looking at how you bring American gas into Greece and then up at Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova, Ukraine. Mega projects are really on the table. And so let's be ambitious and let's see what we can achieve by doing so. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember well that pre-COP26 decision that the British government should stop supporting oil and gas investment overseas. Of course, that affected the British embassy in Baku quite significantly, given that was the main activity of the commercial section there. But that's exactly why we set up the British Chamber of Commerce in Azerbaijan, to really sort of help British companies in that sector. So thank you very much indeed. And I think that the focus you gave us on the transition to renewable energy, green energy, is a very good lead into what Joanna's going to talk to us about, COP30 and the follow-up. And there we go. We've just deleted the two people on screen, I'm afraid. Hopefully they're still with us online and can hear what we're going to say. But Joanna, over to you with...
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I do apologise for displacing our remote speakers. As an academic, I am used to my PowerPoint presentation, so I hope you'll forgive me if my presentation is a bit unusual. It will also be unusual because I confess I'm not a regional expert, so my work is on the intergovernmental climate negotiations, the COP process, as you might know it. And what I've been asked to do today is to provide you with an overview of the outcomes of COP30 and maybe going forwards as a kind of, I guess it's a framing, one of the framings of all the issues that we've been discussing this morning, and which I found very interesting, I have to say. So any assessment of COP30, indeed of climate change efforts, have got to take into account the context. And it won't be a surprise to you if I say that backdrop has been uniquely challenging this year. I don't really need to go into all the geopolitical or the economic turmoil. Also, you mentioned disinformation. I think that's an important one that we're facing at the moment. And all this, certainly from a climate perspective, has been very much exacerbated by the, no exaggeration to say, ferociously hostile attitude of the White House to anything climate. But there were positives in the run-up to COP30 in Brazil in Belém. One of these was the great symbolism in the location and timing. So it was 35 years since the start of the UN climate negotiations, 30 years since COP1, hence COP30, also 10 years since the adoption of the Paris Agreement, which I hope will be familiar to you, at least in broad terms. Symbolism and anniversaries can provide an opportunity for reflection, for, a little bit more of a platform for going the extra mile maybe. And Brazil certainly rose to the occasion in terms of drawing on this historical legacy. I should have added that Brazil was, of course, the host of the 1992 Rio Earth Summit, which some of you may remember, which was, I guess, the start of global environmentalism. And from Brazil's initiative, there rose this idea of drawing up roadmaps for zero deforestation, obviously deforestation a big concern of Brazil, and also for transitioning away from fossil fuels. Now, I should specify this was never intended to put forward hard and fast rules. The UN climate change regime does not determine national policy, but the idea was to present certain guidelines, certain principles, for example, energy security and diversification, as we've been discussing. So that was very much an aim of the Brazilians. And COP30 was very much under pressure to achieve some real successes in implementation on the ground, to try and bend that global emissions curve, which continues to rise, although rising more slowly, and it may have peaked, but now it needs to go very sharply down, and also to bridge the gap, which you see on the right panel, between national pledges at the moment and the Paris Agreement's goal to keep temperature rise to well below 2 degrees and to try and lower that ceiling to 1.5. Okay, now, Belém was certainly not a failure. I would certainly counter that narrative. It adopted more decisions than any other COP, any of the recent COPs. Decisions don't always lead to action, but they're certainly an important marker. And the centerpiece of these decisions was what was called the Mutirão headline decision, and this draws on a word from indigenous peoples' culture, which means the global collective efforts. That gives you a sense of the kind of messaging the Brazilians were trying to put forwards. But despite the best efforts, certainly, of the Brazilians and others, I'd say including Azerbaijan as the previous COP president, Belém was disappointing, put it that way, for many who were seeking faster decarbonisation. So the roadmaps led absolutely nowhere, not even zero deforestation. And certainly on fossil fuels, there was absolutely no mention whatsoever in any of the decisions coming out of Belém. So that was certainly disappointing for many, as I say. Generally, on the mitigation, and by that I mean lowering emissions, on that package, again, it was dubbed very weak, with very little to help bridge that gap to 1.5. So interestingly, only 122 countries out of 194 or so had sent in their climate pledges, those nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, that had been due that year. I'm pleased to say that many Caspian region NDCs did come in, and I'm sure the rest are on their way. But nevertheless, there are only 122, so that was quite a decline in enthusiasm. There was quite a lukewarm endorsement of the science. In fact, the language highlighting recent scientific extremes, weather extremes, was much weaker than it has been at previous COPs. And that was because some countries explicitly did not want those references. And certainly in terms of climate finance, from north to south, there were very limited actual funding pledges put on the table. Now, it certainly wasn't all bad, and I think one very important outcome was this strong upholding of climate multilateralism. So in this Muchi Rao decision that I mentioned, the strong reaffirmation of support for the Paris Agreement, for climate multilateralism, that was repeated several times, which was actually very encouraging, bearing in mind this decision was adopted by consensus of the 194 countries present. The US boycotted the event, I should say. And I guess partly because of this, the Muchi Rao decision expresses hope that the agreement will soon enjoy near universalities. That's kind of diplomatic speak for the hope that the US will come back. And the G20 declaration, literally the same weekend, very much amplified those messages about the importance of multilateralism. There was some progress on adaptation, although these were seen as, they were contested in the final plenaries. They were seen as still a bit disappointing. And there was the adoption of this so-called just transition mechanism. So this is quite interesting also for the region. It's a mechanism to try and promote equitable, participatory, inclusive transition away from fossil fuels, so in a way that really responds to national, local, regional concerns. So that will be an interesting one to watch. And also new dialogues on trade. So this brings up the question of the CBAM, which I notice hasn't been mentioned today, the carbon border adjustment mechanism that the EU is putting into place to try and have a carbon tax at the border. It's far too much for me to go into it now, but that's what these trade dialogues are basically designed to address. So in the final hours of Belém, having not managed to secure anything on the fossil fuel transition, the Brazilian presidency said that it would pursue this on its own initiative. And likewise, Colombia and the Netherlands undertook to host what they called a groundbreaking conference on precisely this issue. So these kind of initiatives outside the formal UN process is something that we call the coalitions of the willing, interested, more ambitious countries going off on their own track and hoping to attract others. Now, there have been lots of these in the past. They've never really fulfilled their promise. So, I mean, we'll have to see for these. Certainly, the Brazilian presidency is in post until COP31, but it tends to be a bit of a lame duck as the next COP approaches. So it'll be very important if this is to progress for Turkey to really take up the baton. We'll have to see the extent to which that happens. So I'm going to turn briefly to the region now. So I've been following these COPs since COP2, so a very long time now. And I think it's fair to say that with a couple of exceptions, the region has had a relatively low profile in the negotiations. And I think that's been partly due to the fact that the region doesn't really fit very well into the climate convention categories, which are very much developing countries and not having much of a space for maybe developing countries that see themselves as economies in transition or are not part of the G77. So that has made it more difficult to get places on the various specialized bodies, on adaptation, on capacity building. Caspian countries have been excluded from those in the past, despite best efforts. And also it's difficult to get a place at the backroom negotiations, with those places tending to be allocated on the basis of established political negotiations. And certainly the region, the countries tend to have diverse political coalition memberships. That does make it difficult to really promote issues of common interest So I've heard today a lot of really fascinating regional initiatives, but these don't really come through maybe quite so much in the multilateral regime because it doesn't have that kind of structure that fits regional diverse membership. But certainly over the past 10, 15 years, there's definitely, I've noticed a growing commitment, engagement and visibility. So as I said, many countries have submitted or are up to date with their NDCs. That's fantastic. Most have also submitted their biennial transparency reports. Well, that's a bit of jargon, but they're actually very important. That's the first reporting requirement under the Paris Agreement, and they were due at the end of 2024. So this is really the core of multilateral efforts on climate change. And most of the region have sent those in, pretty much on time. So that's really good news. And there are other ways in which the region is engaging as well. So these are very important. They do demonstrate emerging and certainly clear commitments now. I'll just end by looking ahead. So Turkey's ambassador was absolutely correct in pointing to the very important location of COP31 in Antalya next year. And this really seems to top this extraordinary concurrence of COPs in the region. So Azerbaijan with COP29, Turkey I've just mentioned, of course, Armenia as well. And David correctly said how important that COP17 of the Biological Diversity Convention is, not least because that only happens every 2 years. Yeah, so that's a, not necessarily doubly, but it is a very, very important one. And obviously this provides such a great opportunity to showcase the region and its various initiatives. I should say, however, that the arrangement between Turkey and Australia, because it's very much a partnership for COP31, that's a very novel arrangement. And it will require flexibility, cooperation, a bit of creative thinking to make sure it works well rather than being a recipe for confusion. But I'm very optimistic about the former. I just wanted to have a shout out here for the Kyrgyz Republic, which has done an absolutely amazing job in leading this new negotiated coalition, the Mountain Partnership Group, which includes many of the region's countries. In fact, it's probably one of the groups that brings together the most countries from your region in a unified way. So it's very difficult in the climate negotiations to put issues on the agenda. There's a real kind of inertia in doing that just because of political complexities. But, the Kyrgyz Republic managed to do that at COP30. So congratulations to them. So I'll just end by saying that I've been so encouraged by everything that I've heard this morning. I think after COP30, I was feeling rather discouraged. And it's interesting to see a disjuncture, it seems, between the enthusiasm and economic opportunities on the ground compared with the rather slow-moving UN climate change regime. So thank you very much for cheering me up, and I hope that this overview has been of interest to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. So you're a glass 1/3 full, not 2/3 empty type of person, are you?
So today is definitely 2/3.
2/3 empty, but you think it's 2/3 full, do you? I mean, one thing I have to say in all of that, I didn't hear the word China mentioned at all. And I know in the recent COPs, there's been a huge focus on arguments with the oil and gas producers, a huge focus on finance for adaptation. But frankly, unless we get mitigation right and get the emissions down, then we're screwed anyway. And I think that's kind of doesn't come up enough to my mind in the COPs, the whole focus on actually who is emitting the most and what are they doing about it. But we are where we are for the time being. But that's my main concern about the COPs, is that they do go down avenues which may be important but don't address the fundamental issue of emissions. And the region, yes, but has issues both of mitigation and adaptation, as we've seen with the oil and gas producers on one hand, but also the very vulnerable states. You mentioned Kyrgyzstan, the upstream states, which are going to suffer very much from water loss and rainfall loss. So I think a lot of issues which, the Caspian Policy Center has done quite a lot of work and articles on climate change in the region, and it may be that there's more scope for doing things in between COP30 and COP31, given especially given Turkey will be hosting COP31, there may be opportunities there. And yeah, thank you very much indeed again. And I'm now going to turn finally to Caspian Berdiev from Turkmenistan, but also I'm pleased to say he's here in the United Kingdom at the moment as Achieving Scholar. So we're very proud of that as well, and very pleased to see you here, Caspian. So please.
Thank you, James, for that introduction. And one of the best parts of being a speaker at the last panel is your colleagues make your job easier, by mentioning most of the things. So I will I'll try to keep it brief. I would like to start with sharing some insights from the Global Energy Perspective report, which was just a month ago published by the McKinsey and Company. So let's start with fossil fuels. Currently, fossil fuels make around 70% of the global energy. And fossil fuels will here to remain, and it will expect it to be more than half of the global energy consumption, way beyond 2050. So despite all climate related and renewables related efforts, we are expecting that fossil fuels will still play a big role. And in that regard, of course, the Caspian region has abundant resources that can be useful for the global markets. Regarding renewables, of course, its share is set to further increase, and it will make it much more part of the global power generation. And regarding the climate issues, of course, as Joanna also mentioned during her presentation, the global emissions reached record highs in the last year. And the Caspian region, especially Central Asia, feels the climate stress more than any other region globally. So over the past 30 years, temperatures in Central Asia and EU have increased at more than twice the global average. Plus, the region has a high level of water stress. And as we all been closely following the most recent C5 summit in Tashkent, the number one agenda, the regional agenda issue is, of course, the water-related regional cooperation. And now I would like to share some economic outlook related information. The most recent IMF forecast shows that the Central Asia and Caucasus remain resilient despite the global uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. And GDP growth is expected at around 5.6% this year and close to 5% next year, while the global growth is expected to be around half of that rate. So this means that the region is really able to deliver the positive economic development. And as a consultant, I had the pleasure of traveling to the Caspian region countries often and frequently especially during the last 5 years. And in every country, when I travel, I see the increasing trend of both regionalism and increasing trend of multilateral engagement with other global countries. So region, when it comes to both fossil fuels and renewables, and when it comes to connectivity, has enormous potential. And let me also briefly mention the most recent report that was published by the Asian Development Bank regarding the Middle Corridor related infrastructure investments. So roughly half of all investments needed in order to complete the Middle Corridor needs to be financed by the international partners, be it multinational development banks or governments or private companies. So even when it comes to connectivity, I think there is a great opportunity to further increase the engagement and the cooperation. Well, I think, I think that's it. And if there is any further question or remarks, I'll be happy to share. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're about 3 minutes ahead of schedule. So David, do you want us to take questions, or do you want to move on to closing remarks? Okay, and who's doing the closing remarks? Is that you or Efgan? That's David. Okay, so any questions from the floor? The man at the back.
My name is power currently any 20 of the 54 countries in Africa, and you're here today from Turkey and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. That's Russian-led power as well as ASEAN and Gulf. Those are my 2 points. Now the question to Mr. Henry, this is a difficult one, sir. I don't mean to embarrass you. You say you want to leave the world. Can you help explain to people here what happened to the 18 billion clean energy going to the west coast of the country? It was killed on 19th of May by locals in southwestern Devon, which would have brought 1,000 new jobs to Scotland and power clean energy for 7 million homes in this country. Once it was killed here, all those great people put that to work. So I work in this industry. It's not going to Germany. They did all the work, and Germany gets to use it. So question, how'd that die? Why? If we're going to lead the world, what happened?
So I think you're talking about the power cable from Morocco.
Correct.
So the reason why that was stopped by the government was on the advice of the Foreign Office. And the Foreign Office looked at it and said, you haven't got permission from all of the countries whose waters you will be going through in order to build your cable. And they were not persuaded that having a discussion with the French could result in a long-term agreement. They thought the French would hold up until they were offered to have an offtake agreement with a spur going into France. That would make it a more expensive and more complicated project funded by UK bill payers, but the electricity not necessarily coming here. And that they weren't sure the French would then turn around and say, look, we also want to have this part of the supply chain rather than it being in the UK. So they did not think that enough work had been done to get international agreement to take it forward. I loved it as a project. I thought it was a really exciting, novel approach. But at the end of the day, we have to work with the realities of the world and our neighbours. Well, it was blocked by the government as a project which they would support, and the government said that they would not be providing funding support for it.
John.
How realistic, or what are the prospects for Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan actually to deliver electricity into a system via Azerbaijan that could go to Europe? And one specific question, what are Uzbekistan's own goals with regard to achieving net zero?
Sorry, you're asking me? No, oh, right, sorry. Look in my direction, sorry.
Actually, I heard nothing. Would it be possible to repeat it?
Yeah, John, can you come speak in the microphone?
Okay.
Charles, you switch yours on.
The question was, what are the prospects for delivering electricity from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan to Azerbaijan for onward delivery to Europe? And also, what are Azerbaijan's own goals for achieving net zero? Thank you. Uzbekistan, sorry, I'm referring to.
Well, as you might be aware, our region's energy and economic potential will grow further with Azerbaijan joining our regional cooperation, officially announced by the Uzbekistan president at the 7th C5, which later turned to C6 summit, making so the group C6. And Azerbaijan, long reach in oil and gas, also has vast untapped renewable energy potential. So offshore wind in the Caspian could reach almost 160 gigawatts. Solar in the Aran region is highly favorable and hydropower resources remain underdeveloped. But in the meantime, we remain very much committed to this so-called green energy corridor, a trilateral project with Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan, so to transmit renewable electricity across the Caspian and Black Seas, so to Europe, involving deep water cables and transnational infrastructure, exemplifying so the strategic benefits of regional cooperation while requiring strong technical, financial, and political partnerships. And these partnerships definitely will continue to evolve as Azerbaijan now is a full-fledged member of the Central Asia community, and we hope that we will be able to implement all those arrangements achieved in Baku last year within the framework of this most ambitious initiative, the Green Energy Corridor, altogether, as we represent the whole region, mostly known as Central Asia and Azerbaijan, or Greater Central Asia. And I believe there are much more opportunities which we should grasp as we share same priorities and values for prosperous and resilient Central Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. No more hands reaching for the sky. So I would then take the opportunity to thank the panel again. And I think that, from my perspective, it's just both of these sessions we've just heard about the different perspectives, the perspective of the Europeans, if you like, the Westerners as consumers, the regional countries as both producers and as consumers. And I think underpinning all of that is clearly moving towards the transition towards green energy and renewable energy. And I think that one of the lessons I've taken from this as well is just to hear how much more cooperation is taking place, regional cooperation is taking place to, make this transition sort of a goal, a shared goal, if you like. So I feel very positive about that. I don't feel so as positive as you about the outcomes of COP30, but I do feel positive that things are happening on the ground. So even if in a multilateral forum we can't get agreement, nevertheless in practical terms things are happening and cooperation is happening and progress is being made. So I think that's, to me, one of the big takeaways from this conference, this seminar, is just how much is happening on the ground between the countries themselves. So thanks again to the panel. And I'm going to hand over to David for some very brief closing remarks, I think. So thank you very much indeed.
varied set of issues that we've covered together. I set out the complexity and the cost and the length of transition, and it's not a done deal by any means. So navigating new realities was chosen because of it's not so much that it's awful, we can't do it. There are risks, but also opportunity, and I think there's been a mix of that in the discussion. There's so many levels, layers on talking about energy security and whether it's through the geopolitics or the hard security, hybrid disruptions. We talked about state and private security responsibilities, climate. But as we've said in several of these events past, regional collaboration is organic. And it's been happening for years now, but there's some leaps forward. And one of them was C5 to 6. And I'm sure that all of the governments, UK, EU, US, will be now looking at C6 plus, and with our governments trying to keep that collaboration and collective interaction as well as individual. The UK has, for some time now, had strategic dialogues with all of the countries concerned, and that's a good investment in the bilateral relationships. But we increasingly see them in meetings such as COPs. By the way, I'll just say I'll come back to COPs at the end, but COPs, having been to quite a few of these, not as many as Joanna, by any means, but the value of COPs, which cannot be quantified immediately, because you've got the negotiations, and that's what most people see. But actually, the value of the pavilions and the innovation, the networking that comes out, the campaigns that are seen around the world, they energize and actually, leave young people and new generations coming in a pathway that they can fight in terms of a green future. So I'm a fan of COPs, even though one year, a few years ago, I was so angry at it, I didn't go to the next one, and then it turned out the next one was a good one. So that was not constructive. So we heard ambassadors compliment each other with extensive and ambitious plans and achievements. This year we had the Samarkand Climate Forum, which was bolted onto the EU summit. Like I said at the beginning, that was impressive, and now needs to be followed up by the EU as well as the countries. Ashgabat hosted the regional climate conference for Central Asia, and that proved to be quite a good stepping stone for preparing for next year's, well, for this COP, but also next year's climate meetings. You talked about regional energy markets and the need to act so that the region doesn't get left behind. Finance is a massive thing. It always is, and there's always less, and it's always an irritant in COPs and in the regions. But there are positives, including development of regional finance structures, but that's no substitute for broader and robust and large volumes of investment. I was impressed by, once again, by the EBRD's constructive approach to the region, and everything from investment in different areas, all the countries, and water resilience was another thing which I wasn't aware of, but that's a really good way to go at it. The innovation with hydrogen, nuclear, the importance of education. The Kazakhs always bring that up, and rightly so. And Charles, you mentioned it as well. The two-way thing that struck me. Net zero flexibility, if I can say on that. My own view, this is where I do get the last word, is that that's been coming for a long time, and in fact, it was bedded in the system. It was never going to happen exactly. It was written in the playbook. Life is never as straightforward, and sometimes it surprises with leaps forward. The things about the important thing is to get there, keep the eyes on the prize, and also in the risks. We still face the risk of tipping points that we don't understand the science of, and that's potentially happening in the Caspian Sea. So that's an important thing to watch. But getting the balance, it's always been a balance between fossil fuels and renewables, and over time that balance should, again, rather organically move towards the latter, simply because of cost and ease of delivery. But I'll just end with, I'll just say on the resilient economies thing, and I note the gentleman's comments on where it comes from, but it's also from some sensible economic decisions at early days in countries like Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. So next year, it's big. There's Astana Regional Climate Summit on the 20th of June. COP31, we've got a connection through Turkey, with the Australians being the chief negotiators in November, and COP17 in Armenia in October. So there's never, I think we said that, never a better time, and talked about an ambition. That's absolutely the way I think we've been talking about. We're in it together. That was definitely coming from the ambassadors and from the interactions with Charles and others. I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to get an EU person here, but I will keep on trying. I did get one last time, but anyway, we're in it together, and there's lots of incentives for us to work together. And thank you for taking part in this today. Thanks to all the panelists. Thanks to IISS, particularly the people who brought the coffee for me first thing in the morning. And on this note, I just want to say this, I think, is probably best of the three conferences that's done, and that's because of your contributions, everyone, and I'm very pleased of that. On that note, I'm going to close this thing and say that's all, and go well.